solar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Breakfast. We have a presentation this morning. Then I'll have some updates and kind of a year in review like I normally do in December. And always happy to have conversation after that. So we can get started. Hope you all got some members back there. We have both Michelle and Tanya from the Heartland Environmental Justice Center to talk to you about the work that they're doing in the communities. Microphones are in the ceiling. That is not on, so you can just.
It's like wander.
You have to just make sure you stay in the camera because we are live stream.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I'm in the camera. I see myself. Oh. I'll have the slide, but I just want to say thanks for having us today. I'm Tanya. This is Michelle. We're from Wichita State's Environmental Finance Center. You can't see if I stand right there. All right. If you're talking to EPA or someone outside of our area, they also call these environmental justice centers Thriving Community Technical Assistance Centers. For short, that's TICTAC. So EJ TICTACs is another word, but we thought that was too confusing because we sounded like a candy company, and also Thriving Community Technical Assistance Centers too long. So we changed our name to the Heartland Environmental Justice Center, the Heartland EJ Center. We're going to tell you who we are today. We're going to talk about what environmental justice is. Then we're going to talk to you about kind of what we do and how we want to dive into this EJ thing in the communities we serve. And then we're going to talk about what you can do to kind of connect with us and help us chart our path, because this is a brand new thing. The EPA defines environmental justice this way. And since the Environmental Justice Center was set up with EPA funds, this is kind of one definition of environmental justice that we use, which is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. That is a very federal government kind of definition. It's very kind of policy and process oriented. But that's part of what we are and what we're here to work. Like, this is the work that we're here to do. They define meaningful involvement. Like, what does that mean? They define meaningful involvement as people having the opportunity to participate in decisions about activities that affect their environmental and health, their environment and their health, that the public's contribution can influence regulatory agencies, that the community concerns will be considered in decision making, and the decision makers will seek out and facilitate opportunities for the people in the decision making process. But again, we want a more people-y version or definition and scope of this EJ thing. So we also are considering the definition that the first national people of color environmental leadership developed in 1991. There are 17 principles. You can go online and kind of read through those 17 principles. They really break down into two parts. And this is kind of our driving approach for EJ with the Heartland Environmental Justice Center. Environmental justice, and I'm going to read it because when I paraphrase it, it's much less eloquent than if I just read it. Environmental justice involves undoing the harm done in the past and rebuilding something new in its place. And the second piece is making sure that those harms don't occur again by ensuring those who are impacted by environmental decisions are part of the decision-making process, planning, and implementation from the very beginning. So that's how we define environmental justice. So it's people-centered. People who are being impacted by decisions are part of the process and have a voice. So we're mostly funded by the Environmental Protection Agency, that EPA, but we're also with some support from the Department of Energy. So we also talk about energy justice. And this is a pretty good definition of what energy justice is. It's a newer kind of lingo, but it's really achieving equity from the social and economic participation in the energy system. Thinking about the social, economic, and health burdens as those disproportionately harmed by the energy system. So that could be in affordability, that could be in, maybe there's air quality concerns from the emissions, which mostly impact people of color and low-income communities. And so energy justice is another piece of what we get to work on. So who are we? What is this thing that EPA provided funds? There are 17 EJ centers, those Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers across the US. The stars on the US map show where they're located, but EPA divides the nation up into 10 regions, and each region has at least one, some of them have 2 environmental justice centers. You live in EPA Region 7, that's Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, and Missouri. And so our Heartland Environmental Justice Center serves the communities in all 4 of those states. So we get to work with communities all across the 4 states and the 9 indigenous nations.
Do those regions correspond with the FEMA regions?
No, they don't. Nor do they correspond to the USDA regions. So they just like to make it, yeah. But so, and the cool thing about the new environmental justice centers is that they are, the other agencies at the federal level are like starting to, sometimes they're very siloed, but they're starting to communicate and want to work through the EJ centers so that, we are able to support on kind of all those different levels.
There is overlap in those centers though. So like USDA covers part of our region and then kind of up north a little bit. So there is overlap in there, but they're not identical.
So there are also some national centers. So the purple circles on the map show where the national EJ centers are. So those are centers that kind of corral all of us together, but they also have some unique things that they're doing kind of all across the US and filling in gaps where they're needed. So there's a lot of support, groups and folks working together here, and in Wichita State just happened to be awarded the project to have the Environmental Justice Center, but we have, so we're hiring staff. This is a new center. It's never been done before. So we've had to gear up and hire staff. And so our staff is in, Michelle and I are in Wichita. We've got a couple folks in the Lawrence, Kansas City area. We've got somebody in the St. Louis area, and we are continuing to identify where we need folks kind of to be and hiring them as we go. Because this is a multi-year process, and we are finding out what the needs are. Like, we know that we need to hire someone because we've heard from our communities that's like a grant writer person, like the expert in grant writing that can come alongside nonprofits and community groups and help them write their grants, because that's just a need that's been identified. So we know that our next hire is going to be like that expertise. And so we're continuing to do that, like who and what the needs are, and then filling those needs with the folks that we bring onto the team.
Excuse me, exactly when was this center established? Just,
Yeah,
I understand it's new. I don't know
good
how-
question. We were able to kick off the work that we do in July of this year, 2023.
Thank you.
And then like, that's when we started to like be able to hire folks. So yeah, our baby.
I did want to ask if Jeff is still.
Yes, Jeff Severin is the lead for the Environmental Justice Center, and he's out of Lawrence. But yeah, he's the lead.
I thought he was here.
No, he's in Lawrence. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the beauty of, this day and age. We can have a really close network of folks, but haven't spread out all over geographically. All right, but we also know Wichita State and our perspective and the people we hire is just one piece of the puzzle. And we know we can't do all of this great work, and we don't have all the connections. And so we brought along 8 other organizations, and they are also part of the Heartland Environmental Justice Center. So they are scattered across all 4 of our states. They are representative rural communities, urban center, faith-based groups, kind of the K-State, like that sciencey research, you know, because through their extension work, they've got connections throughout the state of Kansas. We've got some national groups, the Community Engineering Corps and the Environmental Protection Network are 2 national organizations that have some really, the engineers, they can come alongside communities and provide that engineering support as part of our group. And then the Environmental Protection Network is a group of folks who used to work at the EPA, retired, or they've moved on to other things, that then provide that like inside baseball information to groups that like how you work at the EPA, or bringing an expertise that might be needed in, you know, research or you know, how to, you know, I don't know, what else do they do? I'm blanking.
They help folks think through the regulations.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the Clean Water Act, it's very dense and difficult to get through. People who have worked with those for years and years and years know all the ins and outs, so we can kind of rely on their expertise for a lot of the regulatory parts as well.
We can pull them into different needs that are identified across our region.
So you have a lot of different kind of stakeholders here. So, I mean, are the communities of color, who's gonna have priority? You know, it's the communities of color who have suffered for decades, for centuries, right? So all this, sorry, this comes off combative. It's not my intent. I'm just trying to understand. You're saying really nice flowery things. And I know you're new, but I just want to understand, I mean, is the real focus on communities of color, and I don't know about how indigenous folks or nations have been impacted. I think anecdotally, I think it's been pretty horrible, right? So I mean, where is the priority here with all these different stakeholders?
So we get the flowery stuff done and out of the way because we want to introduce you and let you know who we are, where we came from, why we're having this conversation. But
Okay.
the short answer to your question is yes, absolutely.
Okay.
The whole purpose of this is to identify communities who have been underserved, marginalized,
Right.
and not just that, but actively divested in, right? So resources pulled and these kinds of things. There are a great number of tools out there that help us to identify these communities down to the census tract, down to a neighborhood that we can look at to see what's really happening at the core of some of these problems and who it's affecting and how long it's been affecting them, depending on the issue, right? As much as we wish we had a time stone to go back and find out, but we can do the best with what we can with census data, with the environmental justice screen, with the climate and energy tools and things like that to really hone in on what's happening where. And using science that's been pulled from various organizations, federal, state, local agencies, nonprofit organizations, things along those lines, to make sure that we're actually getting to the people who need them. Thank you. Does that help?
It helps, and I'll
So,
let you
yes.
get through it.
The focus is yes, and we've had a lot of conversations in our center to make sure that we are engaging with people who understand that, to engage with all of our partners, have a focus in some way, shape, or form on disadvantaged and marginalized communities, whether it's in just their city, whether it's in an entire region, or even the entire country, to make sure that they all understand that who it is that we need to make sure that we're targeting, and make sure that we're finding ways to reach them in ways that they can be reached. So for example, myself and a couple of our staff are working with the community in the Boot Heel of Missouri. And one of the things that we're going to have to travel down there a lot because they don't do technology. We're able to get them on a Zoom call to introduce ourselves and hi, here's who we are. When would be a good time for us to come visit? And so we're going to have to do a lot of traveling to get down there because that's just how we need to communicate with this organization. So even down to those basic levels of understanding how we need to reach the people as well. And that's why we have staff in St. Louis. So she'll be able to pop down there a little bit easier than we will. It's I think a 9-hour drive to this community. We could fly to St. Louis, but then it's still like a 4-hour drive. So it's difficult, but those are the people we got to get to. And so our point, our first role, more than anything, is to sit down and listen. Because we don't really know what is happening. We can read the research, we can look at the data, but at the end of the day, it's that people part that he was talking about. What are people experiencing? What have they lived with in their own lifetime as well as generations before them? And how is that impacting their lives as well? And so we start by listening. It's not us coming in to tell you what your problem is, it's you telling us what you need. So that we can connect the resources, we can make the plans, we can do all that stuff to empower communities to be able to have a sustainable impact within their areas. So we can come in, you know, if we could just go in and fix it, it would be phenomenal. But once our point is to build up their capacity, to build up communities, to get them to sustainable funding, to get them to sustainable initiatives and those types of things in order to help them thrive rather than just institute stopgap measures, so to say.
Is there a facet though that also includes ending future exploitation?
That's the hope.
Okay,
As much as I want to say yes, I can't predict the future. I really want it to be that way. We all
so
want
it
it
has to be a
that way.
focus to
Yes.
be that.
And that's where the sustainability part, when we use the word sustainability, sometimes that gets a little muddled. What are we talking about? Are we talking about like impacting climate change sustainability? No, we're talking about action, sustainable actions. So repairing, so if we're looking at, let's say, a water treatment issue, right? If the water treatment plant needs to be replaced, then that takes a wide variety of actions to get to a point where they can have one built. But then they also need sustainable funding to keep that treatment system going so that it doesn't fail again in another 10 years. So it's building that support and getting them to a place where they can maintain and thrive going forward. That will then create resilience against, hopefully against natural disasters or other types of things that will impact them disproportionately again in the future. So trying to break that cycle through the actions of building capacity. Those were a
That's
lot of
helpful.
words, like, you know, you start talking and you're like, am I, but it's a hard conversation and it's a hard thing to answer. And we don't have the answers, but we have the resources and we can figure out what do we need to do. And every single community, every single person we talk to, every single issue is different and unique. So what we're working on down in the Boot Hill in Missouri is going to be very different than what we work on in northwestern Nebraska. And even inside of the Boot Hill in Missouri, those issues are different among the communities in there based on terrain and geography and history and finance. And so it really is a very tailored approach to whomever it is that we're working with. And then hopefully as we're building with these communities, we can develop tools, we can develop resources that are just kind of plug and play for other communities to be able to pull those tools and do those things as well. Because there is only so many of us and there are a lot of problems across our 4 states, let alone the country. So being able to make those durable goods, those durable resources, things like that, that people will be able to use in perpetuity is also part of our goal. One of the things we just recently talked about this week are community assessments and teaching people how to be able to do a community assessment within their organization. And one of my colleagues and I spent entirely too much time talking about all the wonderful ways that we can manipulate Excel to our will to make it as user-friendly and as simple as possible for people to be able to fill out a few boxes and it generates information for them. And then so something like that would be something that could live on a website, that could be on a flash drive, that could be on whatever medium would be possible. That could be printed out if need be, because we can do that with a PDF or something along those lines for communities to be able to use to do their own assessments after we've left, or another community that needs help or at the same time.
Now, is the hard target just gathering information or is it helping? I'm an engineer. So what are the nuts and bolts of this? Is this planting trees in an area to help with the
It
help
depends on
with
the,
the air, or is it a water treatment plant they're looking at, which is a private public function of government? So we go in there and say, okay, we needed a water plant. We've needed it for 20 years. And Now we got another group of people saying the same thing. We got to, 20 years ago you needed it and you still need it today. So is this a redundancy of some sort or a different line of attack?
Each community is gonna be totally different. One community, it might be the trees, the other community, it might be the water treatment plant, and like our role is to come in, listen, help identify what the needs are, and then help provide avenues to find funding, or maybe or skill support, or whatever it is. We hope we can be that plug in, like that to funding to get done what needs to be done in that community, and then also build whatever skills are needed to support and sustain whatever that project or effort was. Maybe it's a policy thing that we go and assist with. I mean, it could be anything from policy to advocacy training. We can't advocate for things, but we can train people to advocate for stuff. We can connect them to an engineer that needs a plan that they can submit for their water treatment plant. We are like that bridge connector to help get the community what they need. And a lot of it is going to be identifying funding and helping people prepare for and be ready to apply for funding that's coming. It's going to be available, targeted specifically for environmental justice activity.
Cause it's a lot easier here because we all know his phone number and website.
Yeah, but in some communities, they don't have that good connection, and like they need to know how to reach out to their city council members or reach out to their state representatives and
Or understand the process of
Right.
communicating at a city council meeting or something along those lines. And it's also, with one of our communities, it'll be bringing together the nonprofit organizations that are trying to do things and the city leaders to have these conversations, facilitated conversations to identify priorities. Because this group over here says, no, this is the priority, but this group over here says, no, this is the priority. And they're not competing, but there has to be some kind of a priority established in order to know where those funds need to go. And so they're saying, no, this is what we need to do. They're saying, no, this is what we need to do. So one of the things we will be able to do is come in and kind of have this facilitated conversation. Okay, y'all talk to me first. And then we go over here and we talk to these folks, y'all talk to me first. And then we'll be able to find those commonalities, because I promise you they're there. People might not recognize them right off the bat or things along those lines. And it may very easily fall into place as to what we need to do first or what we need to do second, or how we need to even get to where we decide what we need to do first. And then we can convene them together and say, here's what we heard. Are we capturing what you've said correctly? And if so, here's what we heard. What do you think? And help have those guided conversations to bring people together to understand that there's going to have to be some type of a plan to help with these
Mediation.
issues. We like facilitation, mediation. I personally, I shy away from that word because it has that conflict kind of thing. It's just like, we all just need to talk. We're all here wanting to do the same thing, but maybe we see it and we're seeing it from different perspectives. And so a lot of this funding that's coming down will require like municipalities and community organizations to work together. So if we can help people do that, the power in that can be very, very, very impactful.
This goes back to priorities. And so what I'm hearing doesn't make it sound like, I mean, when you have different stakeholders, historically, it's always been the, white, more affluent areas that get their way, right? And then if this is just that, to help both sides see, it's usually the people in power are the ones who are going to win. So what I was hoping to hear is like, this is going to be focused on those communities where they get the priority.
Yeah, we don't work with the people that don't. The people that always win aren't the people that we will spend time with, focus on, or work with. That's not environmental justice. We are here to we're not here to right them. We are here to tackle environmental injustices. So where that's happening is where we work.
I think one of the issues is decoupling it from the economic system.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the issues being we live in a capitalist society. And so when we go into these communities, there's a lot of interest in beautification projects. But at what point in time is it enabling actual people? And I know there's a lot of interest in putting money towards like the operations of a building or something like that, where it's actually people just need money, straight up money in their pockets so that they can live and survive, pay their bills, and then they can actualize themselves. Because right now, because of the way we're connected with these systems, a lot of people are not enabled to come to these meetings like some people. There's just, we're a working class society, right? So are these movements geared towards dismantling those systems really through the sense of providing resources that is detached from a lot of the bureaucracy that prevents people from getting this money to begin with, because people are, as you were saying, educated in a way that can present a grant. So they don't go to a master's program or any of that because they're stuck in this grind. So it is like this movement geared towards getting people outside of that context of the economy in a way that allows them grace, because that's essentially what people need, and that's what the environment needs, because it's a very human experience. If these people are living in depravity, the environments are still going to suffer, however much money you put into these beautification projects. So just to keep in mind, how do we remove ourselves from the exploitation of capitalism, essentially? So
That's a really big question. So at my core, I'm a sociologist, so I ask that question every day when I look at my task list for the day. And unfortunately, in what we have now, we can't. But we can learn how to use that system to our advantage, and we can learn how to access the resources that are available through that in order to change it, right? So kind of, I hesitate to use the word manipulation, but it's using those resources that are put in place to benefit certain systems to the advantage of people who have not had that. And then once that benefit does come into play, it can empower people who have had no voice in order to have a voice to make those bigger societal changes, right? Oftentimes we butt up against barriers day and night. And because our funding does come from EPA, we do have certain rules and responsibilities that we have to abide by as well as part of the terms and conditions of our grants. But we also can empower you all in this room and anybody who's online and anybody who's in any community anywhere to understand the policies, the processes and procedures in order to be able to navigate those in a way that they can get the systems and the resources that they need. So things like, if we want to talk about blighted communities, one of the things that we can talk about is educating landlords and holding some landlords more accountable for weatherization, right? That would decrease gas bills in the winter, that would increase more efficiency inside of homes in areas who are impacted by those issues. Heavily rented areas, places where you might have landlords that are not exactly on the up and up. And this is just an example. I'm not saying this is something we're doing, but those are ways that we can use the existing systems to change those existing systems. Does that?
And yeah, I understand the difficulties.
Yeah.
It's a very litigious world, so a lot of things get processed. So I think even leading to some of our concerns, how do we streamline some of these resources in a way that is more direct, more impactful for like the human experience, because it's not in this current moment. I think we have dreams of having the environment safe, but until you can get people, their behavioral and cognitive processing change to facilitate these operations, because you're just going to have this pool of people that are interested in participating, and then the ocean of people that just don't know anything about it because they don't have time to operate that. So a lot of it just is how do we streamline this in a way that doesn't get bogged down by the continual processing.
There are two parts that we're actively working on. So the first is talking within our staff, within our partners and their staff, to identify what the barriers outside of the environment are. Why don't people come to meetings like this? They have to ride, they have to work, they don't have childcare, they don't know when the meeting is, they have some type of impairment that prohibits them from being able to access this space, whether virtually or what is causing, what is a barrier to participating to start with? And then how can we fix those? Is it having more community focus within a block Do we do this around every single block in District 1? Maybe, yeah. If that's what it takes to get the word out to people. And understanding that there are barriers that a lot of folks who live in that bureaucracy just do not understand. And being able to communicate that we are in a very unique place where we can communicate to those higher level bureaucracies. When we talk to EPA, we can say we can't do this because people can't get there because they have 4 jobs. And so we can be that kind of point to bring that bureaucracy to a little bit of realization to say, here's why we're not getting this kind of stuff that you think we should be getting, because you are too disconnected. And then we can talk to these folks to say, tell me what you need, because I'll go sit in the park if we need to have a conversation, or I'll come to your house and have a conversation, or I'll walk up and down the street to have a conversation if that's what we need to make sure that people are being heard. So we're in this really cool place where we can be this mediator, again, there's that word, but that point between both to help people who are upholding that bureaucracy and those things that create these bigger societal barriers, to help them know you're not seeing the whole picture here. You can throw as much money as you want at environmental justice, but if it's not accessible to people who actually need that money, it's not going to do any good. The second part of that is EPA is recognizing that to a degree. And next year, do we know when the grant making is coming out?
Nope.
Sometime next year.
They told, yeah, I'm hoping December we'll find out who the
Yeah.
centers are, but then it'll start hopefully early next
They're
year.
establishing grant-making centers, which are organizations similar to ours that will be funders. So like we are not funders. We don't give money, we help people find money. But these grant-making organizations will be able to develop an application that any group can apply for and not have to jump through all of those federal hoops to access all this money. Because that's the problem, right? You talk about a 3-person nonprofit organization who's brand new, they don't know how to navigate a federal grant system.
It takes me and an entire Wichita State grant department
Yeah.
to do our EPA grant.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, 3-person nonprofit.
so these grant making centers will develop their own applications that these small organizations can access that federal funding through that. So it's kind of this path through. And we are so excited for that to be able to come, because I have a whole list of people that'll be ready to apply for those things by the time they come out.
And that money is
Mhm.
dedicated for
Mhm.
nonprofits, environmental justice work, the folks who have not been given money in the past. That's the goal of that funding. It's
And the
not for the regular folk, like the folks that have been getting the money for the past 20
Not
years.
just for beautification.
Right.
If beautification is gonna help with stormwater and flooding issues within a community because there isn't adequate stormwater, and so we put in some natural grasses to help with erosion or something like that, then sure, but it's not just going to be planting pretty flowers on the medians down the main road because people want something pretty to look at when they drive. And I apologize if I'm sounding a little negative, but that's where this money is gonna go, into people who actually need it to make their lives, their environment, and their health better. And so those, yeah.
So we talked about doing hard projects, having targets, mediation, and you approach the bureaucracy, the government, public works, whatever like that. I guess my question is, what kind of stick do you have if you need to beat somebody with it, or do you even have a stick?
That depends too. I'm a much more of a carrot kind of person.
Well,
As much as we wanna.
carrots easy, you got money out of it.
Well, as much as we wanna separate the economic from the environment and realize that we don't want to be driven solely by economic factors, that there's a oftentimes we're butting heads with that conversation. We talk to people about, because at the leadership level, cities want economic development. That is the priority across the nation, all over the place. And so we can then, as researchers, as data junkies that I am, yes, me and a colleague, we spend way too much time talking about how to use this data for these very reasons. Because most, I'm not gonna say all, but most of the environmental impact things that we can show save cities money. And they spur jobs, they spur growth, they bring people here because people want to live in a place where it prioritizes their people. So maybe being able to show the impacts of these investments. So if an organization gets one of these grants and is able to make an impact, whatever that may be, if we're lowering carbon emissions, if we're weatherizing homes, if we're fixing streets or water lines, those types of things, we can show how much money that is saving the city, and money talks, right? And I know that seems like a bit of an optimistic approach. That's how I personally approach these things, because if you come at a city manager anywhere and tell them that they're being less than great in a very firm way, you're going to get resistance. So I know that's not what a lot of people want to hear. I tend to like the more carrot approach, because they're not going to work if we just come with, now we can, if we're talking water and wastewater, then we have a big stick, because that's regulatory compliance. That is massive public health issue. And that is where we can use a stick. Like, you do this or you're going to pay 10 grand a day until you get this fixed. Like, when we don't mess around as the EFC, we do a lot of work with utilities as our kind of and we don't mess around when it comes to utilities. If we're talking water, wastewater, it's all stick all the way there.
One of the issues though that we see in District 1 is not city water, but it's the piping that goes into the house that belongs to the property owner that does not have the ability to replace some that might have lead. Is this some effort that could be made by this organization to help replace pipes, to do testing on people's tap water to see if they have contaminants that changing out the piping from the city to their house might help? Is that something that this kind of funding could help with? Because I know that even if it's not a real concern, it's a concern. Everybody wants their water tested. Because we need to know, a lot of our houses are 100 years old. We need to know what's underneath them.
It is. And I think a lot of that is going to come under one of our other centers,
Right.
which is the Water Infrastructure Center. Because there's a whole lead and copper rule now that's come down from the federal government. Every single pipe has to be inventoried and identified. And at the state level, they're trying to figure out how to approach those issues, as well as at the city level as well.
And it's from source to tap. Like, the lead and copper rule covers the whole thing. So, and it is, so there are funds for that, and we can.
Yeah. That's what I'm wondering, because I know that's a concern, especially with all of the groundwater contamination we have here. Some of it is just what comes into my house. Even though the groundwater I know is not getting into city water, right? It's still, some people's pipes inside their homes are that old and need to be replaced, but they don't have the funds to do it. I wouldn't have the funds.
And that's a conversation that we'll have to have on so many different levels, from the national to the different centers that we have. You know, there's EFCs and Tic Tacs and all that stuff all over the place, as to what's coming down from EPA regarding replacement of pipes, right? Are they going to fund some of this? Are they going to provide facilities to cities in order to change those out from people's homes? What we don't know yet, because there's been no guidance on that. And so it does feel it's a very frustrating holding pattern, because people are aware that this is an issue. How's it going to get fixed? We don't know yet. But we know that there's conversations happening. We know something's going to happen at some point, and we keep our ear to the ground daily, by the minute, in order to, as soon as something comes out, we're on top of it. So as the thing that makes us an EFC, we have a project director at the national level that he's at in Kansas City, and is very, water and wastewater is his life. And as soon as he knows something, he emails Tanya, and we know what to check out. So unfortunately, we're in the waiting place with everybody else too.
Because going back to that, the carrot and the stick,
Yeah.
Flint, Michigan,
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
somebody didn't bring big enough stick.
And hopefully,
Well, that's where the economics played the devil there.
of course, And that's where we can have conversations within the communities to point them to resources. That's where our community engineering core can come in, because those preliminary engineering reports that are required for loans are crucial, and a lot of small communities can't access them. But our community engineering core can bring in people to do that for free for our communities. So that's where all these partners come into play. Oh, look. Here's just kind of a smattering of some of the things we think of. Technical assistance is a phrase that we're trying to move away from. EPA really likes it. We're not actually going in and building bridges, building water treatment plants, planting trees. We're not actually doing that work on the ground. We're doing these kinds of things to support that work being done. So providing some education and outreach. Why do we need a wastewater treatment plant? Why do we need to spend money on that? What is energy justice, and how do we navigate accessing solar panels or things along those lines? And that grant piece is a big part. How do you find them? How do you write them? And how do you manage them? And so these are just a lot of what we provide with communities will be very targeted and very customized to whatever is needed. And then some of these are the trainings that will be developed over the years that'll not just be a standalone come to this, but we'll record it. It will be something people can watch on their phones or on their TVs or however they can access the internet in some way. And we'll recognize that some people don't have access to the internet, so finding ways to make sure that they can access those however they're able to is something that that's also on the top of our mind. So is it a flash drive? Is it something that plays at the local library community center or something along those lines to make sure people have access to this information? This is an example of kind of what it could look like when we go into a community. Some folks are even at like 0.5 over here, right? They're just like, I don't know, there's some stuff happening. We don't know what, we just need help. And so we can come in and start with, well, our first step is let's think about what's happening and what we need to do. And communities can fall anywhere on that spectrum, and we can just pop in and help with whatever gaps are there that they may need. But it will start with those conversations and that listening and just tell me what's going on, and then we can go from there. That being said, we recognize that we are all staff at the university. We are in a place where maybe we have kind of our own thoughts, and we want to make sure that we have people who can make sure that we're thinking about accessing these communities in appropriate and efficient ways and sufficient ways, right, to where we're reaching people. So we're building an accountability board. I forgot to put them out. We'll have a little sheet that you can put your name and email on there to get updates and those kinds of things from the EJ Center. But if you are interested in serving on our accountability board, there's an interest form. It doesn't commit you or anything along those lines. Check the box on there and we'll be sure to send you the link. It will be out on our website next week as well. Here's how you can reach us. There's our website, our email, there's a contact us form right on the website. This phone number leads directly to Jeff Everett, our project manager, our program manager. That you can always reach out to Tanya or I. We're on the second floor of Lindquist Hall at Wichita State. Feel free to stop by. But don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. You get back home today and you're like, she was talking about this. What did she mean by that? Let me know.
Thank you for the presentation. I want to let you finish so that I can formulate my questions. But first, what is your mission statement? Do you have a mission statement?
We don't have a formal mission statement because the process of developing one is going to take time, but our purpose statement is this one back here, where we are. This is our purpose.
Okay, that's your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so because as I was listening to both of you tell what you're doing, and so you're saying, no, your job is not to, you don't like the word mediator.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what, okay, you said that. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is I'm listening to you saying that you guys are already out in St. Louis. You actually have a team in St. Louis. So how is it that you determined that St. Louis required assistance? Is there you kept saying nonprofit. So is it a nonprofit that has to knock on your door and say, hey, this community needs assistance? Or is that just me, a regular community member, and that, who knocks on your door for you to come out and say, yes, no, you do need assistance?
So a person in St. Louis is a staff member, not necessarily us working with the community of St. Louis, not that we wouldn't, but she's just our staff member who happens to live in St. Louis. And because that's part of our region, it's beneficial to us. As far as a community or an individual needing help, anybody can knock on our door. If you're just a concerned community member who's like, I'm seeing this thing happening, let us know and let's have a conversation. We can investigate, we can look into it more. If you're a nonprofit organization that's like, I just need funding to get off the ground, let us know. If you're a neighborhood association and you're struggling with erosion issues in your neighborhood, let us know. Yeah, all of those types of things, it doesn't matter who you are, who you represent, where you're considering anywhere in our 4 states. Yeah, give us a call, shoot us an email, let us know, and we'll figure out what the best solution is. If it's a community that maybe is looking at a new wastewater treatment plant and they're ready to apply for what's called a state revolving loan fund, I'm gonna send them over to my colleague who is working on getting communities access to that funding. If it's a community organization that's really struggling with maybe some food issues, then we're gonna evaluate some of that and see what's going on there. If we're looking at some outdoor air pollution or those types of things, then we're gonna figure out what the challenges are and where those need to be, where they need to go. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I guess the confusion that's coming in on my part is, the question was raised about, hey, what about water pipes? There's an issue with water pipes, you know, because of the age of the home. But I recall you saying, well, no, that's not us. That is going to be lead and copper or something like that. So I guess my concern is, if we were to come to you, how do we know what you do and what you don't do? We don't know that. I know I don't. I'll speak for myself. I don't know that. So
That's where the customization comes in, because to be frank with you, you don't either. We're still trying to, like, I don't want to minimize our expertise or anything along those lines. We are new and we're discovering problems and challenges and barriers that no one anticipated.
okay.
And that's where the listening comes in, because I don't live in the Boot Hill of Missouri. I have no idea what's going on there. They want me to go down there in January. Does it blizzard there? I don't know. I hate the snow. You know, and so, and I know that seems a bit diminutive, but that's the situation. It's like, okay, tell me what the problem is, because our hope is to connect the people, the organizations, the communities with the resources that will help the problem. So if you need an engineering report, us at Wichita State, we don't do that, but our community engineering board does.
And
So
we
we're-
will connect you and make
So
that.
we bring them into the
Yeah.
conversation and say, hey, there's this community, here's what they're happening. We're gonna jump on a call, we're gonna all get in a room together, whatever the case may be. Say, here's what they've told us is happening. I need you to talk to them. And then we determine what the next steps are, right? Or if it's a community in Iowa that is looking at some kind of energy transformation, then we bring in our Iowa Environmental Council. So it really starts with that initial, what's the problem? Where's the problem? And who do we need to bring to the table to have that conversation?
And it might be so I heard from Lori, I heard she has concerns about her house and lead and copper, so I'm gonna, like, when I get back to work on Monday, I'm gonna reach out to the city first, find out from them where they are in the process of getting their lead and copper inventory. And then I'm gonna follow up with her, and it might be like a gentle handoff, like, hey, they need this information. Let's make sure that her community or her neighbors that she's concerned about have this connection and can, you know, and then when maybe a grant opportunity or something happens, you know, about replacing folks who can't, you know, replace their own lines, like figuring that out and helping, maybe there's a nonprofit that comes in and we help them get a grant to do that lead service line replacement. But I'm gonna keep in contact. So it might be a handoff. We'll listen and then make sure whatever question it is maybe it's a thing we handle, or maybe we pass it to another organization or another funder or something through that handoff. Or we'll just be honest, like, oh my gosh, this is totally out of the blue. It's not in our wheelhouse. We'll try to figure out where it goes.
But you're not a grant organization.
We do not give money, no.
You do not give money.
No.
But money has been given to you in order to be listeners.
To do the work, yes, to do this connection, yes.
And walk alongside folks to get them to the grant fund.
Yes.
So like the goal in that picture of the process, we identify the needs, where was it? Yeah, we identify what the concerns are, we think about what's our end goal, how do we then make a plan to get there, that will probably take money. Where can we get that money to get to our end goal? Then we figure out where we can get that money, we help walk through the process of that grant writing or that funding development. And walk through that process with that group, neighborhood organization, nonprofit, whoever it is. That's kind of like the end goal. It's like figure out what the plan is and then get to that sustainable funding.
Right, so again, so
But we were
EPA,
given money to do this process.
EPA has given your organization money to go out, find the communities in need, and for you to basically hand off and say, hey, this is who you need to speak to, but you do not give money to communities.
Correct. That will be the grant making centers
Got it.
that they're gonna announce
Okay.
hopefully soon, at
The
least
grant
by the
making
first of
centers.
the year.
Okay.
But we also don't just pass up, we do some of the work in the communities as well. So our Boot Hill groups, and I'm using them a lot because that's one of the main ones that I'm involved in, and we just talked extensively about it yesterday. So we will be going down there, we'll be hosting community meetings, we will be gathering data, we will be building potential grant funding opportunity lists and stuff. We will be reviewing their grant applications, we will be like right alongside developing a strategic plan, developing a timeline, all of those kinds of things in order to build the capacity. So at the end of our work within that community, we're literally handing the work off to them. So it really just depends on what the need is as to whether we're the ones in the community or if there's someone better suited.
Hi, sorry, got in a little late, but caught the tail end. So do you have, I'm not sure how long you've been in existence, but do you have examples of possibly organizations, neighborhoods that you have currently worked with or currently working with in Wichita?
Good question. We are a brand new organization. We were established like in July. So since July this year, 2023, we've been building our team and getting everything set up. And again, we are just starting to identify where the needs are and what groups are interested. We have been talking to a number of organizations in Wichita and just getting to know them and what their interests are, what their concerns are for the community. Some of them were helping, like, okay, there's gonna be money, and we're doing this for a number of organizations across all the states that we serve. We serve in Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, and Missouri. And so helping people get ready, the nonprofit because to get access to that money in the grant making center that's coming, you have to be a nonprofit, like 501c3, all official. So helping the community nonprofits be ready for that with that designation.
Right, so like I'm working with 3 different people here in Wichita who already have an organization that they want to become a nonprofit. So it's starting with what does that process look like? What do you need in order to do that? So to get 501c3 nonprofit status, in Kansas, you have to have at least 3 board members. So then it's finding ways to connect these people who are building this organization with people who want to be involved in the community to serve on a board, right? And then I help convene those people in order to develop bylaws, to fill out the articles of incorporation, to send the stuff in, to fundraise, to give them ideas on how to fundraise, to pay for that process, right? And so it's walking step by step by step to get them to that status. So without that status, they're not going to be able to get that funding. And so, and that's part of our conversation with a lot of folks too, is all this money is here, but it's not getting into the hands of people because they don't have the legal standing that they need in order to access that. So we got to go back to the very beginning and get them established as an organization. So when this money comes down that they can access, they are ready to go. And any other funding opportunities, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not sure what the timeline, getting them ready for that money when it comes down. I'm in Wichita, so I can kind of give you a little feel on this here. A lot of you're saying nonprofit organizations here. So you have a lot of neighborhood associations that may have had a 501c3 nonprofit type identification when they first set up or years ago. They've been inactive, let it go defunct. A lot of those. Churches the same way. They stirred them up because at that time, that's how they figured they would fund a lot of their things that would go on and stuff. So a lot of them said dormant or just so to help them maybe get them reactivated, recertified, you can help them with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm gonna give you my card when I'm done up here.
I think
And
you should.
I wanna talk to you and because reactivating is a whole lot quicker than establishing new. And
That's-
yeah,
That's the biggest problem in these communities that you're seeing around in here. There are tons of neighborhood associations. Most of them are their 501c3s are inactive,
mhm.
they're defunct.
I
You know,
see.
so and so what's happened over the years in here because of a lot of companies or businesses and stuff who may support even the neighborhood association, maybe some of the functions in the church, they look for you to have that identification. They need a tracking system in here. So most of them, they just stop even asking.
And we can evaluate churches' situations because there are different types of entities that they might be able to do that would even be easier than nonprofit. But yeah, I'll give you my card. Let's set up a time and we'll get together, whoever you want to bring to the table. And let's have a conversation about that.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that's good.
Absolutely. And that's anything along those lines. Just a question is like that, yeah, let us know, because we don't know everything, and even the people we talk to in the community are still somewhat segmented. So I have heard that before from a couple of folks I've talked with, but
Well, I think you'll have much bigger success and a bigger pool when you identify those organizations, those churches and stuff here, because that becomes your cooperative in here. You group those together with like issues and things that are going on, because they're next door to each other. So it doesn't stop one place, not another. Sometimes that it creates a much bigger pool, even you going after these grants.
which makes it even easier because a lot of those grants want several different community.
They want collaboration.
Yeah.
All of them say,
Yeah.
we want
Oh,
collaboration.
they love that word.
They love it.
Collaboration.
Yes,
Partnership.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, sounds good.
So that's us in a nutshell. I know you probably left with even more questions, but again, let us know. We're happy to talk. We are happy to be upfront about any of these processes. We know it's a struggle because we're learning alongside of everybody too, so.
And you helping those 501(c)(3)s, is that at a fee? Is that,
No.
are they being, they're not being charged?
No.
Not by us.
Ours-
To get your 501c3, they're like a processing.
Yeah,
For-
from the state.
From the
we still
state.
have to pay, but for our services, no,
Yeah.
our services are paid. That's
That's what
our
the
grant.
EPA gave us money to
But
do
but
that.
isn't that the same thing that PTAC does? PTAC doesn't help people get those 501(c)(3)s.
ETAC?
PTAC. It's like the small business, it's the procurement, something.
Oh, I don't know. I have no
Okay.
idea about their,
I'm just curious.
but no, we
Totally separate.
totally separate.
Okay.
Totally separate.
Do you have another question?
Yeah. Okay.
Go for it.
So, kind of back along the lines of that, and you were talking about the requirements, which a lot of these 501c3s and those other nonprofits need with the boards and all this set up in here. And so again, I circle back around to a lot of our organizations, our neighborhood associations, and our churches and stuff. They have set up probably, I want to say boards years ago when they first incorporated, did their thing in here, but those boards that are either stagnated, one or two people running them, and so do you guys offer training? I know Kansas Health Foundation and some of those offer training on how to build your boards and staff those up. So a lot of them just, even though they offered it free, some of them, they went to it once years ago, but they won't go back or bring their new board members on to know that. So most of them are just stagnant by old board members who just left in place and just doing what they can do with what they have.
I talked with, Councilman Johnson just before we started, his wife and I go way back.
How
And
far
so Oh. How far back? Let's see, it was in college in 2012, so 2012.
Okay.
But so I know that she's very, that they both are very invested into the young people in the community, and being able to make some partnerships between us and some of these young professional organizations with people who want to give back to the community, to establish those boards, right? And to get people on board who can learn about the organization, can kind of succeed into, and let some of those folks who have been doing it for 20 years maybe take a break. Or something. That's on you. But trying to bring some of these young professional organizations. I have some conversations with some of the departments on our campus that have students that are looking to maybe integrate somehow. Again, we're still trying to figure out what it all looks like and what that could look like from a student perspective. But for example, one of the organizations I'm working with needs help with social media communication. We have a campus of 15,000 students who know how to use TikTok. So there's got to be somebody who'd be willing to spend a little time.
So you're on the campus of Wichita State?
We are.
Scary, that's scary.
Why is that scary?
Well, I say this here because I'm a longtime resident of Wichita. Lived, born and raised across the street and back. But Wichita State sits in the heart of our minority community. It has for years. If you ask Wichita State what's going on in the community, they don't rightly know. They say, I don't know. You ask what community what's going on in Wichita State. All they know is they tore up that golf course and built a lot of buildings. They don't know. So it's a lot of opportunity both directions here. Neither one of them seem to connect and know how to connect together. And
keep in mind that we live on Wichita State, but we aren't. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes with the university terribly much either, but I will say that I'm injected into like the Sustainability Council. I did kind of frustrate our president a couple of years ago when I was questioning, like, I'm a data person at heart, and I was questioning where he was getting, why he was using the data he was using for COVID information. We had a wonderful conversation, and he was happy to talk with me in depth about that. And so being able to come to the president of the university and say, this is what's happening. He knows of our center. He was there at the launch, and he's excited about it, to be able to help him show what that excitement looks like. That's part of our role too, is to bring our community together and have these conversations. There's another center on campus, the Public Policy Management Center, one of their community outreach coordinators and I plan to get together so that we can coordinate some of these efforts as well and rejuvenate some of these relationships in the Fairmont neighborhood and the 214 neighborhood, because it's right next door to us. We've got to be able to work together. Because they need the support. So I hear you.
okay. I like a data-driven person in here. So what's your first observation even in our meetings?
All right, last question.
Oh, no.
I think I take back important, and I appreciate Brandon having these every month. But collectively, if you collect the data over here, you count the attendance, so it'll fluctuate. But things that stay most constant, even with those fluctuations, are people who attend. So some of these are neighborhood presidents, association presidents. Ain't nobody in here under 55. Yeah, you know. To come with you guys. but and so to really get, and Wichita State has a community engagement group. They've got several of them, you know, whole departments in here. But we're still having to struggle to make that in here. And so even getting the participation of the community to come into these opportunities that Johnson offers and stuff in here is getting to be a struggle to get that. So maybe we can talk about those.
Let's talk.
I think that has a lot to do with the way charity is used to attempt to bring people in. So charity in this economy generally is there to hide other things. So when it comes to charity and trust, you know, there's obviously a lot of resources being offered. I think his sentiment is exactly that. The WSU has given plenty of lip service to charity, but inevitably the surrounding neighborhoods still suffer.
Yeah.
So how do you present this money and present this charity in an ethical way, in a way that is trust building? And so a lot of the, you know, the resources they say are there, but, you know, people aren't using it not just because of the bureaucracy, but also because, well, what do I owe you after you give this to me? You know, unity is only a temporary thing, and it's something that's utilized during political years to bring people in to gain control of the government and sanctioned violence. And so we have to know and get this recognition about money equal violence. Because our entire society, our global economy is based off of the mediation of military and the acquisition of resources from poor countries. And so when all these resources are being stolen from everyone else and then given to us as charity, well, it's a very disingenuous loan. And so when we approach even your system of directing us to your stakeholders, what do they want out of it? What are they wanting from us?
Something.
We recognize that that's the history and the message is nothing. We need you to answer our phone call. Like, that's what we need you to do. We need you to fill out the form once in a while. But outside of that, and we recognize that building trust is not a one meeting situation. We're gonna listen, we're gonna talk, we're gonna share, we're gonna understand that this is confusing and frustrating, and then we're gonna do the work next to you. And so in another year, you're gonna see that we're doing the best we can to walk the walk, right? And try, all we can do is try, I can't promise, but we can be as transparent as possible, and we can be as honest as possible, and recognize those issues. All right. You said it was the last, but we're gonna leave some cards, so, yeah, anytime.
It's strategy.
Oh, am I saying?
Yes,
Yes, please, because I'm gonna bug you.
All right, presentation from the Heartland Environmental Justice Center. I know that announcement went out in summertime. Now you get to meet the folks behind it.
Carla Jackson.
Glad to have them here. I am going to try to knock all of this out in 35 minutes. So if you have questions, please write those down. So, because if we start talking through all of this, we'll be here till 1 o'clock. So I will give you all of my updates and kind of some direction and where we're going. And then happy again to answer questions after that. Today, like I normally do in December, try to highlight some things that were accomplishments, updates on issues you might be paying attention to, and then look forward to the next year, which is 2024. Just start with a few updates so you all know in case you're looking at coming to a council meeting. Starting on Monday, December 4th, the City Hall parking lot began transferring to an unmanned parking managed system. So instead of having the person that's there taking your ticket or giving you a ticket and then taking your ticket afterwards, it will be unmanned. We're changing parking fees as well. So if you park in the lot where you would normally get a ticket, your first 30 minutes is free. You don't have to pay for that. Like, I think now it's 25 cents or 50 cents. For an hour, it'd be $1. For an hour and a half, it'd be $2. For 2 hours, it'd be $3. For 2.5 hours, it'd be $4. And for 3 hours, it'd be $5. If you want the whole day, it's $6. There's a secret to that though. If you're going to meet with someone, you can get your parking validated. So it's free for you. So that is coming. So the parking lot will look different if you're planning to come to the council meeting Tuesday or go visit City Hall starting Monday. It made the news about the bonuses with law enforcement, the meeting before Thanksgiving. Me and 3 other members of the council voted to defer that in order to get both bonuses and an agreement for 2024, some form of contract, as well as the Jensen Hughes recommendations into the police contract. As of Thursday, they did come to an agreement, so Tuesday we'll be voting on that. What that will look like is the bonuses that you heard about, as well as a retention bonus that's smaller in 2024 of $1,000, increases in salaries by up to 13% for law enforcement, additional overtime pay, and again, the Jensen Hughes recommendations will be in that contract.
Let's get together.
That was something that we all heard after the text message thing, that people were concerned about the culture. We even heard that from officers as well. And then Jensen Hughes, I believe, is the #2 respected organization in the country for law enforcement. So we wanted to take those recommendations seriously. So those, the three that were supposed to be in the contract will be in this contract on Tuesday. So that will be there. Again, if you want to come, I just told you about the parking situation. You can come talk to us on Tuesday. Council meeting starts at 9 a.m. Also, that same day, we were looking at a retaliatory landlord ordinance. Most of you have heard me over the years say that, working with, landlords and property owners who don't necessarily care about their tenants is something that's real important to me. We deferred that item from November 21st to December 19th in order to have an opportunity for every dad in the city to hear about the ordinance and what it looks like and what we're doing. I was fine with that because I wanted it to happen in 2023, so it will come back to council December 19th. If you want to see that presentation for District 1, I don't think it's on our agenda officially yet for Monday, but we have a DAB meeting here at 6 o'clock. I should have a presentation on that. Even if we don't, I can talk through it because we helped write it. But essentially what that would do is fine landlords found guilty of retaliation up to $2,500, depending on the number of offenses where that is. It's not something that's truly fair because the state law is not fair. That means if you live in black mold with a bunch of animal feces, roaches and bed bugs, you still have to pay rent. It's illegal for you not to pay rent and you can be evicted. Nothing we can do about that because that's state statute, but everything else, as far as you complaining about it and then the landlord trying to evict you, change the locks, kicking you out, now have a municipal process, if this is approved on the 19th, I think it will be, to address that landlord. It's still honestly not fair because the eviction process happens quickly and the eviction process is on the county level. So we're trying to take a step on the city side. That does mean that your landlord can be convicted in our court, found guilty of retaliation, have to pay a fine, and you're still evicted. We just don't control the county courts. That is the conversation we'll be having with county commissioners about how we can work together on that. But right now, we want to take the step that we can going forward. So that should come back again December 19th, and we'll have that presentation here Monday. And then I share it on social media. I should have typed it here. Every district's DAB meeting, want to hear from those districts as well. I am assuming some people will feel differently about this, so it's always good to have as many voices as possible in the room when that comes up. Then last update on things that have made some news, the emergency shelter opened last night. They were expecting 130 people. If you don't know where that's at, again, it's 21st. Haven't heard anything negative so far. In fact, I've had people say they didn't realize it was open. So to me, that's good. We had a stakeholder tour, a media tour yesterday, a stakeholder tour. I think community was invited as well. I was able to look through and get all the questions I had addressed. So security was one thing people continued to bring up as far as cameras. There are 16 cameras there. I was able to look at the screen and see everything that those cameras could see. You can't see around the building to make sure that things are okay. Humankind is also confident they can handle the demands for food, but as always, they can use more help. So if you want to help, I'm sure they'll always take food from you. And also, if you want to volunteer, you can sign up online to volunteer. I know myself and a few other council members will be there volunteering as well, because we are all in this together in our in-house community, people as well. So those are a lot of the updates. I'll talk to you about the ongoing challenges we have, things again that you've all heard me talking about. We still have not had an official item come to council for zoning changes, notifications. We did have a workshop. If you remember from the workshop, or if you didn't see it, I have been advocating for increasing the distance of notification, making sure that not only property owners get the notification, but also tenants. Renters don't tend to get those notifications. But the landlord doesn't care to tell you, then you don't know unless you call. And then making sure that we have multiple languages. English is not the only language in Wichita. And if we can simplify the letter, I'll continue to say English on the front, Spanish on the back, second page would be Vietnamese. And then on the back of that, whatever the fourth most spoken language is here in Wichita, I think that would make it more inclusive and more informative. I have backed off of shifting of having notification go out 1,000 feet. I support 500, only because when we looked at how much it costs to notify everyone, it began to get really pricey at 1,000 feet. I mean, we were looking at almost $10,000 to notify people. Most of these folks can't afford that, but there are people who it becomes a situation with someone who has less wealth, wants to develop, and they have to pay $10,000 on top of their development. It's not as fair, but 500 feet will get more people than 200 feet. So it doubles that area a little more. So hopefully we can see that come up. There was some pushback from some in the development community. I'm gonna continue to push for changing that and making sure more people can understand zoning changes and when those things come up. Also, we are still dealing with FEMA. I've had some good news, which then led to some not so good news. So we are through most of the comment period with FEMA. If you don't know what's going on with that, if we looked at upgrading the Brewer Center, found out really quickly it's in floodplain, which means FEMA has to approve modifying that. We took out the 10th Street Bridge, that increased water flow. I learned about water flow that I didn't know before, but that would help remove that from the floodplain. But then there's another process you have to go through, which their engineers and our engineers talk and look over maps and see how water flow increases and what that actually bring it out of the floodplain. We've gotten yeses all the way along to do that. But then there's this required federal 120-day wait in case somebody wants to complain. I don't know why anybody would complain about their property coming out of a floodplain, but there's nothing we can do about that. So the good news is a bunch of yeses. The bad news is it looks like we may not break ground until May of 2024. You remember, I was hoping to cut the ribbon in the summer of 2024. That will not happen. So more than likely, if everything goes without any hiccups, we may have the Brewer Center open by the summer of 25, which is a lot later than I wanted, but everything else is moving pretty well. We had an art presentation here at the District Advisory Board. I've talked to the main artist already. That same artist is doing work for the 15th Street Bridge. So those things are going good, but again, FEMA is slowing us down, and unfortunately, we can't do anything about it. Next weekend, we will meet with the artists. We'll be working with the artist consultant for the Brewer Center. So there's 3 finalists that'll be in town. We'll be checking them out to see, what they're thinking about for the center. I'm really excited about it. One of the things I've said is I really hope we don't see any plain walls in there. We want to see a bunch of color, beautiful art, and pieces that highlight the folks who are named the park. So I think that that's going to be powerful. And then this last week, some other good news, we were told that Dick's Sporting Goods Foundation has given $100,000 to the Park Foundation to support new lights at Robert Thurman baseball field. So we're continuing to see more investment in McAdams Park, so that's really good as well. We continue to have challenges around homelessness, so working with the county to see what we can do to get that campus going. It's called the MAC. This emergency shelter really brought that to a lot of people's attention, but they've had homeless task force meetings just about every month for a number of years. They're moving toward a downtown campus. That campus, I believe, is either between $50 and $80 million it would take to kind of get that going. But that will be the permanent solution, where you have a campus of all supportive services helping folks in need. So if you're homeless and it's really just because you got evicted, it might be a quick way to get you with an organization to get you back housed. If you have some mental health challenges, there will be services there for you as well. Some folks can't afford the medication they need. So all of that would be a part of the campus. And I would encourage anybody who's interested in our helping our unhoused to pay attention to those task force meetings. I think there's always a virtual option if you can't get there, but those are full of information. We also continue to face challenges with our public housing. So I always hear about people complaining about the boarded up houses that are public housing that we own. If everything worked out the way we voted and intended, you wouldn't know that because people would be in there, they would be renovated. But again, HUD continued to change plans for us. So we are at a point where we are selling those houses off, and we'll be using that money to continue to invest into affordable housing. Tuesday, the council will be voting on another package of houses to go out to the market, 57 houses to be exact. We're going to keep approving those. Hopefully HUD approves it, but the process is we say yes, and then HUD has to say yes. The longer it takes for HUD, the longer our neighborhoods are impacted with those boarded up houses. None of us like it, but kind of what we have to deal with. So we're gonna keep trying to get those out there. Again, preference is homeowner occupied, and then after that, hopefully if someone's developing that, they get a homeowner in there or rent. We do have a housing crisis, so we're not as adverse to renting as we were. And then other housing challenges, really is just system-wide. There are things I will just continue to elevate that hopefully we can get some things addressed. Just the process to address these issues, having out-of-state landlords that are not responsive, folks who don't hire the right property management. And then when it comes back to, you know, we were talking capitalism earlier, right now, to get an apartment, a lot of places that I've called from the folks that have reached out to me about their conditions, a lot of these new apartments, they want to run your credit. So if you don't have credit, you're screwed. If you did have credit, but because you fell into a bad situation and it's bad, screwed. Some apartments require you to make 3 to 4 times the amount per month of that apartment. All these barriers continue to come up. And then if you have an eviction, you know, it makes sense if somebody wants to rent out an apartment, if you have a extensive eviction history, they're worried about getting paid. But when you have one person in Sedgwick County that's responsible for 1/4 of all evictions, and they don't give you a chance, they don't care about what situation you're in, and now you have this eviction on your record, now you probably can't get another apartment. So it's just tough. It's a bad situation. Municipal wise, I mean, it's a conversation I'm having. I don't know if that's gonna be a city, county, or state solution, but I'm gonna keep talking about it. These are real life challenges. There are no real programs to keep people in apartments. I know someone reached out to me who just got a bad situation at their job. They got fired. They may get the job back, but they don't have money right now. Rent's due yesterday. They just need 1 month to stay in their place. But if they don't get it and they become homeless just because of some stuff that happened at work, there's nothing to help. And there are some organizations that are kind of tapped out right now, but there's no real support for that person who's just in a bad situation right now. And if somebody's being housed, oftentimes you don't get second month support. So if you get a place to stay, but you have no job yet, it may take you 3 or 4 weeks to get that job, then another 2 or 3 weeks to get paid. You really need 2 months rent support. I've talked to some people who have some resources about that. I'm hopeful that in 24 we see some investment in a 2-month strategy to help folks, but that's an ongoing challenge as well. I think we should always talk about those challenges that continue to happen with folks and housing, because it's a struggle. Just people living paycheck to paycheck or one issue away. Like I found out I had a nail in my tire. If I needed 4 new tires, that's probably $1,500 versus rent. You know, it's just so much there and so many people are on the brink. So we got to do some more on housing. And hopefully it happens at the legislative level. Challenge with the legislature is they like to preempt. So if the cities want to do something good to take care of their residents, sometimes those in the legislature may not like that, and then they'll file a bill to stop us from doing it. That happened after Lawrence had a ordinance passed, I believe it was 2015, that they started a rental registry with required inspections. Legislature said, nope, passed a bill that won't allow that. So you can have a registry with no attached inspections, and even the registry is frowned upon. So there's just a lot there that we have to keep talking about and hopefully get something done on. So some things we did do this year, Jack left, but we had the College Hill Overlay Committee created that will look at how College Hill residents and businesses work together better and build out a plan for development there. There was some concern over a few houses that were torn down to build a parking lot. And with that, College Hill is a place that's pretty vibrant with businesses and residents, and they wanted to work on that. So we got that committee created. I made all the appointments last week or the week before that. So that's going. They'll start their planning here pretty soon. This year, we also had a really great ribbon cutting for the Chester R. Lewis Reflection Park. If you haven't been to that downtown, go check that out. Honoring the life and accomplishments of Chester Lewis. He did, again, as I said that day, way more than I knew about. I had heard about him, but not everything that's down there. And just how amazing of a person that he was and what he did. So that park is downtown. If you haven't been there, definitely take folks there. The artwork is beautiful. So check that out. It's a nice, calm place to be. Also, we are in the process of planning a park that will honor the Dock Obsidian and African American history in Wichita downtown. A lot of people don't know we were downtown. We got pushed out from downtown into mostly northeast Wichita and have since spread out throughout the city. But we'll have a park down there. It hasn't been named yet, but it's at the Finley Ross Park, so that'll be renovated. That's the sunken part. So that will be redone. The statue that people have asked about, the sit-in statue, will be relocated to that park. Also, we approved bathrooms downtown, one in After Park, one in A Price Woodard, as well as water fountains. So we will see how that works out. Some people in the community have wanted to see that. There were some security concerns around it, by the way the bathroom is designed, it should be fine. You can kind of see if somebody's in there because the bottom is not closed, so you can see some shoes or something, somebody's in there. There were some concerns I had because one of the portable bathrooms was set on fire by somebody at one point. These, I think, are metal, so we shouldn't have any issues there, hopefully, but those will be installed. Also, Patrol East, which is no longer in District 1, is coming along. If you go by AMAC, you go southeast, you'll see it coming out of the ground. Looking good so far. Patrol West, thanks to Councilmember Fry's hard work, will be relocated to Northwest High School, open ground over there. They'll also have a program where you can get students interested in law enforcement, and they'll have a police station right there next to them. So that's pretty exciting. Appreciate Councilmember Fry's work on that. There have been some approvals for development on the West Bank. I know not everybody was a fan of that, but EPC will be building apartments, hotel, and that'll kind of wrap around where the stadium's at. That will actually start more debt payment once that's up, because it'll be more revenue generated from those apartments, the development there. And then lastly, this year came up, I received a few emails about it. You just heard a little bit about water treatment plants. Our water and sewer rates for this year were set again at 5%. Staff was really good about projecting that over the next decade. I think it's a 30 or 40 year repayment on this, but we have two loans for the water treatment plant. We have a WIFIA loan federally and a state revolving loan fund loan. And one is 51%, the other is 49%. But what that enabled us to do is to keep water rates low. So without those loans, if we just put that money on everyone's back, we'd be paying probably upwards of 13, 15% instead of 5%. So none of us like the increases, but the increases are much less this route than another route. But we did approve those. They've stayed there. Water rate increases will actually drop 27 or 8. So instead of going up 5%, they'll drop down to about 3%. So we'll see that decrease over time. And then looking ahead, a few things I'm doing good. Looking ahead, quality of life is a continued issue. Like I said, with housing challenges, that's something that I'm going to keep talking about, find resolutions on. When I was in Atlanta for a conference, not to get everybody's hopes up, but this is a real thing, and we actually qualify for it. Wichita's a Title I city. There was a lady from HUD who explained they do have funding that can actually help us quite a bit with our housing stuff, whether you own the house or if you're a landlord or if you're just a private owner. They have funds that can come in and check for lead. They have funds that will check for lead and paint. They have other funds that will replace your appliances. If you have an electrical system that's outdated, they will help with that. If you need weatherization, not a kit, real weatherization, windows, doors, siding, roofs. And the city can qualify for up to, I think, $5 million, which is not a lot for the city of Wichita, but I'm looking into that. And if we can get those funds, that's something that our housing department will go after. And I think that'd be great because both landlords can use it as well as homeowners. They gave some amazing examples of what these funds will do. And the lady said they're just trying to give the money away. So I said, well, we'll take it. Let's figure out how to get it. So that's going to be continued work going forward in 2024. Also looking at some of the stuff I've talked to you all about as well. When we look at the living conditions of people, if we find that there are like apartment complexes where multiple units have the same issues, I'm still supportive of trying to remove occupancy from those buildings, making that landlord or property management company pay to relocate people while they fix that. People should not have to live in those conditions. And again, I'm gonna keep trying to do what I can to make sure we write that here in Wichita. One good thing is once you get it fixed, if it's fixed right through the inspection, at least we know that there's some time that that'll be a decent unit. So we're doing it slowly when individuals reach out, but my hope is to really improve our housing stock and show how much we care about the folks who live here. Also, Evergy had their meeting on the Redbud Trail, those power poles. They had a 30% meeting, didn't have a lot of turnout. I think it was about 17 people who showed up. But still moving along with the Redbud Trail. What came out of that was a consistent push to look at if we could put art on those poles because there were folks worried about spray painting and graffiti. So we are actually looking into working with Evergy on what would be about a 10-foot rack on the bottom of the pole where artwork could be placed. And then that could be replaced every 5 to 10 years or so, or whenever it might wear out. Actually a pretty cool concept, but we're looking into that. We'll probably have most of those answers at the 90% meeting. We don't have a day set for that yet. I'm assuming 90% will be sometime in the fall of next year. Just with all the work they have to do, but I'll make sure everybody stays up to date on that. I'm still pushing for ranked choice voting to replace a council member. If you remember what happened in District 3, we appointed Jared Cirillo. There were, I think we did 3 weeks of voting going through. We all held the same vote for who we wanted, and somebody switched last minute to get Jared appointed. I didn't like that process. It's not fair to the district if us council members don't agree. So ranked choice voting would allow you in one day, everybody ranks their person, filter it out, and DAB would have their decision. Those 5 would come to council. It would all happen in one meeting. And the person who ended up, well, not to go into all the details of how that works, get it in one meeting. It's fair, it's easy. And again, those are just appointed for the remainder of a term, which normally is less than a year. And it's odd, I have been through 2 of those with Councilmember Tuttle and Councilmember Cirillo at the time. Now, our 3rd mayor, so it's been weird on council. But I'm still pushing for the ranked choice voting. And park and rec wise, looking again at quality of life, looking at more continued improvements at McAdams. The 15th Street Bridge designs will be at the District Advisory Board here pretty soon. I think this Monday, might be January, February. I'm still working on getting a community garden started at Murdoch Park. You've seen that mural that was put up, beautiful mural around the bathrooms. We want to get a garden going there. Talked with Troy, we've already have some preliminary plans on that and some funding, as well as some funds from a grant we received from AARP to put a chess table out there. So we'll try to get all of that going next year. I think that'd be a great community space. And then in the CIP is the park play equipment. Forget what year that comes up, but that'll get new equipment when that comes up in the CIP. So still working there. Looking for some major opportunities at Dr. Glendot Park in the coming years as well, to get some more use out of the park, some more investment. I've also asked our Park and Rec team to look at putting all of our original splash pads on a timer. So if you've been to the Edgemore Water Playground, those kids are out there, they have to slap a button for the whole thing to come on, and after I think 25 minutes it shuts off unless you hit the button again. That helps us save water, it's more efficient. And I thought about that when I was driving by Fairmount Park one day and there were no kids out there and the thing was just running. I was like, where's the crowd? We're trying to tell people to save water. So hopefully we can get those systems installed. I think it makes it more fun. The kids always race each other to hit that button over at Edgemore. Most of the time it's one of my little ones. But trying to get that going. We've also started the conversation with USD 259 to partner on youth football, specifically 7th and 8th grade. That's something I think benefits our football community as a whole, having those high school coaches involved with our youth coaches, expectations for the young people knowing growing up. It's the same thing. Coaches get eyes on people early, and we can all talk about the rules of grades. Once you get to college, if you have below a 2.0, you're gonna play. And so if we're talking to our young people now about staying above a 3.0 the best they can, that if you do have a lapse, if you're above a 3.0, you're still okay. And tell them not to be like me. One semester I majored in football, my 1.5 did not let me play the next year. So trying to get them focused on that. And I don't know if the news came, but there's a mural happening over at the Lynette Woodard Center that looks really good so far. So if you remember the mural that was in there, that will look much different here pretty soon. Artists have been doing an amazing job on that. We'll continue to look at economic development going into 2024, trying to find innovative ways to use our incentive tools to support small businesses and startups, as well as housing. Our new assistant city manager, Troy Anderson, has some ideas about trying to use some of our incentives that we normally look at manufacturing buildings and businesses downtown to support housing. So I told him I was interested in learning more about kind of his creative thoughts. We had a workshop on it. I can't remember what month that was, but hopefully we can see that continue to work. And then continuing to support Propel, which we were able to start with District 1 Hyatt funds that we had left. If you want to update on that, I think all the remaining funds are in the District 1 grant and a parks opportunity that we've been working on, some scholarships. Then road-wise, if you haven't seen Popular over here, we did start the Dirt Street program. District 1 had the first street, and it's done. It looks great. It's not dirt anymore. We even had a gentleman come outside while me, the vice mayor, and mayor were outside filming our little 1-minute preview about it. He was excited about it happening. He thought it was going to take much longer than it did. So about 3 weeks later, that road was done. Looks really good. So we're continuing that. Next year, again, for the next couple of years, we're investing in dirt roads around schools. So trying to make sure that kids have safe environments without the dirt pollution from those dirt roads. So that's where it starts. And then we'll focus on lower income neighborhoods for other areas. We've continued to invest in improving roads. So when I got elected, I think we were at 4 million a year. We're now at about 11, 12 million. So we definitely increased that. I know some people don't believe it, but we are. All of those cones are progress. That is our response to what we've been hearing from people. And also the improvements on Grove Street from Redwood to 9th Street. It's not done yet. There were some people publicly complaining that it doesn't look good. That's because that's phase 1. Phase 2 is the new surface that comes over that. That's the same thing that happened on Woodlawn and 13th Street and all the emails I was getting about that. I'll make sure I share that video more often. We do streets in phases, so you'll see those signs out. First, you'll see them out digging some stuff up in those rectangles, getting out deficiencies, then you see those filled in. Then it's a little bumpy, and then people complain that we're not good at fixing streets, and then the new surface comes. But then after that, the next year, then we go over it one more time with another protective overlay that extends the life of it for 7 years. So it'll look like we're redoing a brand new street. We're not. We're putting some chemical over it that extends the life of it. So we're continuing to improve streets. We are working on a, I guess you can call it a concrete street program. Most of our older established neighborhoods, and most of them are lower income now, have concrete roads that look terrible. You get that Durapatch stuff that everybody hates, the tar and the stone. The concrete just costs so much to replace, you can get more of doing the asphalt. So we've been talking with Public Works about having some funds set aside to build up money to start doing those concrete streets, because those neighborhoods deserve to have quality roads as well. And I was talked out of a push because I said, if it's easier to do asphalt, why don't we do that? And they said, well, concrete's better, it just costs more. So you don't want to take those out, put it in asphalt roads. So I said, I'll shut up about that. Let's keep the good stuff there. It just costs more money. Last couple updates, libraries. We'll continue to see new investments at Maya Angelou and Rockwell. You'll see interior renovations and some programming changes as well as some additional support from Maya Angelou Library. Once we got that mural on there, I think some of you heard from DAD meetings that actually did help with attendance. People now knew like something was there. We've got a little bit more we're working on, and I'm working on some additional outside artwork to bring people in as well. We'll have increased hours there once we get folks hired. So instead of closing at 6, hopefully we can get it closed at 8 like other libraries. And then it's going to be on all of us to try to get community to know it's available for them to use at that point. That's coming. City council wise, January 8th, 2024 at 6 p.m. at City Hall is the changing of the guard ceremony. So we'll have our new members sworn in, one person who won re-election sworn in. So January 8th, Lily Wu will be sworn in as mayor of Wichita. Becky Tuttle will be District 2, Dalton Glasscock, District 4, and JV Johnston, District 5. New news that Tasha has not heard. I was texting Dalton a minute ago. Dalton has confirmed to come to our January breakfast to say hello to everybody. So if you want to meet the new District 4 council member, he'll be here. That ceremony normally is an opportunity to say thank you to those who served, congratulate those who won, to see some great speeches. And then everyone will take their seat up there at the bench. And if you do come, make sure you look at everybody's face who is new to the council, because I remember my face when I sat up there. I was like, wow, now I have to make decisions. So you'll see that look on their face change. The burden of government governing will hit them. But looking forward to working with my current colleague, Councilmember Tuttle, and my new colleagues. And then something that'll be talked about Tuesday, but this has been talked about by Vice Mayor Hoheiser for a while, is campaign finance reform. We have a few people on the public agenda that want to encourage us to go back to where we were in 2015 before we allow LLCs to contribute to political campaigns. The Vice Mayor has been working on that. I think that will come to council sometime before January, but that's something that you will see. That's something he's been pushing for. There's some discussion right now between LLCs and PACs, and which one, if any, should be allowed. But that conversation will be happening soon. And he's been pushing for that. So I don't have a date before that will come to council, but if the reform does happen, then all candidates will have to get contributions from individuals, and businesses won't be able to contribute. That does not solve for the super PAC thing that the Supreme Court had, so there could be super PACs outside to do what they want, but a candidate could not take money from them. Super PACs just act on behalf of whatever they want to do. Then last update, 2019 Borough Contamination and Other Contamination, heard from the Environmental Justice Center. One of the challenges in Sedgwick County is that there's over 208 active contamination sites. Some of those are active, basically a couple gallons of diesel fuel spilled in the ground. And then you have the main one, the 29th and Grove, which is 3 miles of contamination. County, we are working with the county on how to address that. We're focused right now on 29th and Grove first, but that is a conversation in the background of how are we going to work to notify people in a better way directly where they are. As far as 29th and Grove, we've shifted from those regular public meetings on the contamination site. We'll probably do more annual meetings when there's actually more to talk about. Early on, we just wanted to make sure there was attention brought to it, that people knew what was going on, what the dangers were, and if anybody saw those reports that came to the meeting that was using well water, that they would stop. I hope that they have. I've continued to find people who live in that area who don't know. So we're going to keep trying to, behind the scenes push that don't use the well water. But we won't have any major public meetings until probably next year. Union Pacific is working on a door knocking campaign to get out to the neighborhood with Root the Power, local organizing group. Also, they're working on their plans for design of remediation. That was something I really wanted to see done this year, but we continue to have some setbacks in public meetings and never actually got to talk about that. So this last public meeting, we just pushed that, and I was very adamant about, let's talk about this, and then let's get moving. The longer we take to get those things designed and in the ground, the longer it takes to remediate. And again, that's a 10-year plan. And that's 10 years from when it starts, not 10 years from when we told you about it. So once those things are in the ground, they're working and they start, 10 years from that it should be cleaned up, which is a really long time. So we're gonna keep pushing forward on that. We did successfully talk about testing. So again, if you know anybody who lives in that area, they can get a free cancer screening. Going to Hunter Health, Grace Med, or Health Core Clinic. All of those clinics are in the area as well. So if you go there, that's all you have to talk about. I'm still working with United Way on getting an option for 211 so that you don't have to pick. You can just call, tell them where you live, and they can kind of tell you where you want to go. Or if you have one of those clinics you prefer, you can go to that one. But we're still working on that. I think that's it. So I will stop. I'm like over about 5 minutes of my goal. I spoke for 30 minutes. If you have questions, I am happy to answer those specifically.
Well, what is the, I know it's from, oh, I'm sorry.
No, you go.
I'm sorry.
You're fine, no, you're fine. I'm
I'll
telling
wait till-
him no.
I'll wait till last.
Specific, because I've heard two different things, so is the contamination from, what is the areas? Because I've heard it's from Hillside to here, and then I've only heard it from Grove. Whatever, so exactly what is the area?
So 29th North, which is right south of K96 down to Murdoch.
Okay,
The eastern boundary is Grove. And then the western boundary, we've said 135, it's not really 135. Trying to make sure that whole area. So it's that skinny area for that one. But also within that, there were five other contamination sites from dry cleaning. And it's all the same TCE.
so it's really from Grove back to I-35, it's not Grove and over to. Okay, that's where, because I've heard two different things and I just kind of want to know exactly where. the
It's
contamination-
easy to think that, and originally, I was asking for a bit of a nerd, not enough to fully understand everything they're talking about, but I really wanted to know how we be sure that it's contained in that area. It had to do with the makeup of the ground and the stone in the area that really does keep it contained in that area. It took them a while to explain that to me at 5th grade level, but I can understand.
Okay.
That's been the challenge the whole time is, and I don't knock science, they're brilliant people, but once you get that level of education, you don't talk up here. He might nerve, but I don't know with this, you bring it down here a little bit. You bring it down here, I kind of know. Always ask them to break it down here, so we get it. So that's where the graphics came from that we put out. And again, the science says, because I try my best not to knock science, science says that once the groundwater is like out on the garden plant, it's in the sunlight for like 1.5 seconds or so, it's safe, but they also tell you that you shouldn't walk barefoot in that area if there's like water from the ground, like the groundwater out. So I've just told people, knowing both of those things, how about we just not use groundwater for anything? And just stay away from it. Specifically, scientists will not say that. I say that. I think it's safer to say don't use the groundwater.
So is so the people that have lived in that area, is there a certain time length that they had to have lived in that
Nope.
area?
Not for the cancer screenings, no. You were there a week. Our hope is that we spread the word. There's so many people that live there. I
Right.
have people emailing me like, I lived there 20 years ago and I'm gone now. Like I'm hopeful that everybody who lives there goes and gets cancer. Just to be safe. And we have funding for that. Now, the focus, because of the HELP study, is on the 2 types of cancer, liver and kidney. If another type of cancer is found, it's still not bad because medical professionals now know and they can direct you to that. Even if you don't have insurance, Project Access is stepping up to help out.
Thanks for the update.
One thing that I think has been skimmed over, or at least the approach is different. Speak of quality of life and housing crisis. One thing that I'm interested in is criminal justice reform, defunding the police, and then clemency for a lot of the people that are in our prison system. So there are a lot of disenfranchised families that are disaffected by or affected by these criminal justice systems that are and have been proven to be disproportionately utilized. So there was a huge conversation about defunding the police 3 years ago, but that's largely become silent. And our city largely denies that we have any grievances against our police. The police are kind of touted as these big saviors. But when you actually get into the anthropology and you actually talk to people, there's a resounding discontent for these systems. But the people that they are most affecting don't necessarily have a voice to contest these systems. So I know you were excited about these new police stations, but it does seem like we're going on a very different route of increasing funding for the police, increasing the amount of money allocated to sanctioned violence to control our streets. I know this isn't something you'll have an answer for right away, but I at least want to keep this conversation on the table so that we know that there is discontent for the police in this city, and that when we produce legislation, we need to be gearing towards the removal of a lot of those statutes and laws that are currently utilized in our judicial system. So it's more of a statement that this is still on the table. Protests are still happening, and criminal justice reform, defunding of the police, and clemency need to be pursued by the council. It needs to be had. The conversation needs to be had, and it doesn't need to just be washed under by the more conservative council. So next week, there's supposed to be a meeting about us giving more money to these people, where I think we need to be removing a lot of the statutes that require we utilize these services to brutalize people. Because one of the problems with quality of life is that a lot of these families are having their parental units stripped away when it comes to like social workers and the child welfare stuff. There are children being stripped away, put into prisons. So we talk about quality of life, and yet we have all these systems that essentially disenfranchise people that are poor. And we strip away their economic potential to work and gain housing because it's more profitable for the city to put them in prison because we have for-profit prisons here in Kansas, here in the United States. So one of the things that I would like to be on the topic is actually how we reduce the amount of violence utilized by our city and how we can actually influence care and consideration and humanity through resources in a lot of these disenfranchised neighborhoods. So I don't really expect an answer for any of this, but more or less putting the statement there that there is still heavy discontent for the Wichita Police Department, and there are indeed abuses that need to be recognized. Because that's one of the things that our government tends to do because police have qualified immunity is that we don't recognize and then be held accountable. And money is not the only resolver of these conflicts. With the Lofton case, I know the parents are essentially being paid off, but people murdered a child and they need to go to jail. That's accountability and justice. So that was a collective trauma that we all experienced because I know a lot of people have kids and they don't want them to be put into these jail-like situations and then be fined into oblivion just to get their children. That stuff happens all the time. I follow a lot of the justice boards, and there are people that don't have their children. They're being strapped with all these fines, and then you were saying one catastrophe, but a lot of the catastrophes end up being the immoral laws that are placed on the bodies they're being infringed upon. So what is happening with this commentary of needing to defund the police, needing to decriminalize nonviolent behavior so that we can ensure people aren't being preyed on by the police?
I knew when I pointed at you, you would have a very complex comment. First said a lot there.
And it's a huge topic, and I don't expect like a huge response. Really, it's just to keep this conversation on the table because we swept by with praise that we have these facilities for the cops, but there's a lot of concern with over policing. We know that the technology is getting to the point where we have the Panopticon, the Foucault that are watching us at all time. The government doesn't need to be watching us at all time. And it's not a matter of, oh, if you're not doing crime, you won't mind being watched. It's like, no, that's an infringement of our privacy, our right to privacy. So we just have this automation in the council, this automation in government that just has this blanket phrase for the police without recognizing their abuses, their violations, their culture. I know too many of the instances that have happened in our prisons. There's rape, there's murder, but they're all kind of graded in a way that kind of allows and hits them with a wet noodle. But again, it's because these systems allow for certain amounts of abuse because it is a violent system. If we operate our system on systems of fines, fees, and incarceration, and that's how you're making your money, and that's how you're making profit, you're getting fined if you don't do that, that is creating a very toxic situation when it comes to recidivism. Because if you put somebody in a box and throw them back into society, they're gonna go back in that box because they're gonna break some of those same laws because you've disenfranchised them completely. And so a lot of these things are automated. And I think that's one of the things we need to be conscientious about in today's world is that all of these things are permissible because of the systems that enable it.
All of these things are permissible because of the rhetoric around them. So the system could change if people made it change, but they don't because of the rhetoric. So it's a lot of what you're talking about, I actually don't disagree with when you look at state and federal, but that's where it is. You have a legislature that people demonize like AFP, but I have been at tables with AFP talking about criminal justice reform, getting rid of mandatory minimums, changing laws, not going after certain populations, some really minor crimes. Those in power in the legislature, when you see the ads, it's lock them up and throw away the key. It's not.
Tough on crime. Easter, the sheriff is tough on crime.
It's always that, and what we know is I think 97% of people who go to prison come back. So if we're not doing anything inside to rehabilitate, give skills, build, whatever they may have had, a lot of people commit crimes just in the moment, or there might be some lack of understanding and we're not improving that. Doesn't change, but that's on the state level. I'm not a fan of all the for-profit prisons. Then when you get into the political rhetoric, keeping those are jobs. They put them in those small towns where that's like 80% of their economy. They'll work at the prison. So if we look at shutting those down, like then you have that issue, and the people who care about being elected are gonna make sure their prison stays. So there's a lot there. There are some tables working here with DCF on those challenges. I can tell you, I know DCF has done a lot of bad in the state. We hear that there are some efforts to improve, but I also hear from families that it's not improving. So we have to have those conversations. If you look at our, it's not on our federal legislative agenda, but I tend to be able to get a few things, state legislative agenda. It's not above the line, so it's not in the printout, but we have criminal justice reform on there, something I continue to look at. And if there are ways to change laws so that law enforcement doesn't have to get involved with a few things, always supportive of that. I also think, so the narrative around the police stations, it's exciting because you look at Patrol East. I think Patrol East, where it's currently at, is more, was built for 40 officers. I have 120. So the excitement is giving them an actual space to work in. The whole goal over time is to reduce the work that law enforcement does with things that they don't need to be involved in, mental health, all that. Increase in ICT one, we've done that, it's just moving really slow. If you look at what we've done with WARP was an initiative that, if anybody was paying attention to what I said that day in 2020 from the bench, started looking at what can we do on the social justice side to be more restorative. So people with suspended licenses, rather than trying to ticket them, arrest them, revoke licenses, how can we get those restored? So WARP is actually funded at a small level. We need some more funds in there to help people get their suspended license restored, get a restricted one. If the legislature makes progress on revoked licenses like we've asked, then we'll look at that too and get you back to being able to drive without fear of being arrested. The other things we were looking at is, and I'm pushing really hard, I hope that next year is Amnesty Day, where anyone's fines and fees, whatever the original fine was, it was $100, and you now owe $8,000 to take care of trying to get rid of all of that. Not everybody sees it that way. So oftentimes this is having these conversations, like you said, keeping that conversation elevated. But there's a lot of work to do on that. I think that we will see differently on what we're voting on Tuesday. I do think law enforcement should be compensated for what they're doing right now. And so they're getting salary boosts, but the other challenge is the cities around us are boosting salaries in other parts of the state. So our officers are like, deal with a lot in Wichita. I can make more by going here, so I'll go there rather than staying here. We've lost some really good CP officers as well that many in the community love because they help them out. And then they either get promoted because they're awesome or they'll go somewhere else. So our goal is a couple things. Keep what we have. We're down 108. We don't have all of those other supportive services in place yet to help out with everything. Show new recruits that, you know, we will actually take care of them and hopefully get more community recruits. Love having officers from Wichita and Wichita that know the community and neighborhood. But like you said, it's complex. It's a bunch of stuff there, but I appreciate you elevating that conversation. Keep talking about those things at the state and federal level. Federal wise, I don't know if our delegation will make any moves on that. I think Congresswoman Sharice Davids might get a conversation with her. She's not in Wichita, but if she is, and I can find a way to get y'all connected up. But a lot of that is state and federal. State doesn't always care for Wichita.
But once again, this is a quality of life issue. We're gonna have these conversations about why people can't afford anything. We also would have to look at how these systems have been utilized to break up families. So like, if you want to have some traditional systems of familial roles, we have to be increasing quality of life as a human right. And that's one of my advocacies that I present to my protests is that the conversation tends to be how do we make people into laborious, productive individuals rather than guaranteeing human rights to housing, water, food, and care. So we know that our bodies are being sold to private interests. We are being sold to work for other people. We are alienating ourselves and reducing our value so that other people can profit. And so I am calling for housing, public housing, to be a human right where it is not attached to poverty, not attached to suffering. Because if we wait for people to suffer, the pathology of the trauma changes who they are, it changes their cognitive processing, and then we wonder why in the hell are these people doing these bad things? Well, we know that it is pathologically, it is years and years of living under the crushing economic system that requires that they don't get to be themselves, you get to be a cog. So to resolve that, we have to remove ourselves from these mandatory forms of duress and give people human rights. Because the United States is like the only country that doesn't qualify food as a human right. One of the most basic essentials to our entire existence is not a human right in the United States. So unless we're actually pushing for legislation that guarantees our participation, we're gonna have to start continuing to delegitimize the systems that are ensuring our slavery and our servitude to those systems. And I think you know very well my stance on the police. I stand to delegitimize the police and the violence because it's not just the police, it's the system the police protect. Because they are protecting a settler colonizer document that says if you're going out to make money and be a capitalist, you are promoted. Like that is what we revere as a productive person in society because it's hierarchical. Remove that, I'll go back to human rights. So I don't know to what extent you can legislate that here in Wichita, and I know there's like the state and federal levels, but some type of legislation that guarantees, and you're even saying for renting assistance, it's going to require a certain amount of like UBI or something that is guaranteed to make sure that we can actually participate outside the forms of duress. And if we're continuing to participate in duress, we don't have choice. We all want to be willful, we want to have our independence, but none of us actually have choice when you're a working class individual. And so then, obviously we try to segment all these into like the lower middle class, but those are all arbitrary indicators that validate the suppression of a certain class of people. And so to remove those class distinctions, we have to give people human rights. We have to have a vibrant public housing option that is not attached to poverty and suffering. And we need to be actually caring for our people, because there's, you know, as I was mentioning to the people that just spoke, it doesn't matter how much money into the environment that you throw at it if the people are still degrading and rotting from their poverty. So it's, you know, I focus on the police as the form to delegitimize, but really it's the system they protect. And that's where criminal justice reform comes. That's where a need for resources just to be given to our citizenship. And obviously we're going to make the corporations and the private interests making billions of dollars off of our sweat. Those are the people we need to be taxing. You know, we don't need to up property taxes of us regular Joe Schmoes, because that seems to be where all the burden comes from. It's us having to pay for our own suffering, where it should be the corporations, the Walmarts, the Lowe's, the Home Depots, who are getting exorbitant money subsidies to hold on to buildings. So anytime these big buildings come in, they get sweetheart deals, and then they crush the local economy, and we wonder why we have quality of life issues. Well, obviously, all of our money is being extracted from the profitability of corporations. So we need to make legislation that taxes the people that are getting the biggest boons, so that we can actually fund public housing and public health care in a substantial way. And again, removed from suffering and poverty. This conversation of you have to be immensely suffering, and you have to demonstrate suffering is not the conversation we should be having, because obviously to get to that point of suffering, then you're also going to be having some social disparities as well. You're not going to be able to communicate because you have so many insecurities of the self because you've been suffering for so long. So, you know, they're talking about how do we bridge the gap? It's like, well, I'm glad you're here to do that, but a lot of it is resources and then giving people actual dignity, and that's through human rights. So that's inevitably where I'm focused on in my shaming of the police, to say it lightly. It's like the more violence we use, the less humanity we get. So I'll keep pushing down, hey, we need the humanity on this scale more than the actual violence, because fines, fees, and incarceration is only there to make examples for other people to be afraid. And I don't want to operate on a system that is based on fear. And that's what happens when we get more and more police, and where we don't actually criticize and make them be held accountable. Because you can pay off people all you want, but still the collective trauma of knowing that kid was killed in Jayak is in our heads. I'm not sending a kid there, like, period. I fear that system. I fear it for everybody's children that ends up going there.
Yeah, I'm feeling you, but I gotta get ready to go on a little bit. I gotta get a couple more questions in here.
No, fair. I just want to make sure that accountability was still on the table. Seems
it
like
out
it's a
there.
conversation
Keep the light
that's
on.
been silent.
I'm with you. Keep
Yeah.
the light on. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah.
Go Lonnie.
Oh. Let me rewind. Like, you covered a lot, Brandon. That was good. Let me circle back around. I think that was to the ordinance here, helping tenants and landlords in this portion of it in here. And so have we thought about it? We made more progress. And we talked about 4 years ago about starting maybe even a landlords association. Because even when I talk about these neighborhoods around here, Mill Air, Matlock, Power, Fairmount, most of those that have used to be years and years ago were homeowners. And probably any of those I just called out, and there's probably about 10, 13 of them. Most of them here are now probably about 70, 75% rental property that surround this area. And so it's more rental properties and landlords than there are actually property owners. The ones who are still there, most of those, they're aging, dying off. So it's quickly turned into more rental property. So the idea of trying to reverse that back to home ownership here, and I commend Habitat for Homes for trying to build these up. And they're doing some things in those areas here, but it's a slow progress. But so when I say with this landlords association, yeah, there are slumlords. There's people out there, some out there who just dog out their tenants, but there's good landlords out there. And I think if we were to help empower those landlords, even if we made it where we paid dues in there where that money was recycled out into the community to fix up some of these houses, take care of some of these issues in here, being a part of the association, landlords could actually help you guys police the bad ones in here as well. Because, you know, I can tell you, I'm a small property owner, you know that, I'm two properties, but I struggle with trying to maintain, I maintain my property, but I struggle getting good tenants because other property owners have let their property go, just left it abandoned. You got the ones that are boarded up. It's unrealistic to think you're gonna get somebody who really wants to come in and buy a house, raise a family in an area here that's already looking like it's a cancerous death. So you gotta get that turnaround. So if your biggest army is your landlords here, then you need to empower them more so here with an association, even where we pay dues, where that money's recycled, any of that extra money that's left out, that program federal money of putting money back into it. Because what a lot of landlords do is brought these houses, foreclosures, little things, and they've soaked money out of Section 8, those tenants in those areas that most of them afforded in here. And when the city comes down on them by cutting grass, doing this here, doing here, they've made their money, they've invested, made much more than they would have gained in here. They let the property go. I can tell you, I can drive through here and see boarded up, weeded up, left our properties here that they just let them go. Rather than go back and try and fix it up to put a homeowner or a better tenant here, they just let them go. So you somehow know we have to empower that group out there. So I'm just saying it here, if you're gonna give more, as much power to the tenant to say, keep this landlord off me in here, and he ain't doing the right thing in here. Empower those good ones in here that are trying to do some things to help you to work on those bad landlords and help those tenants. I'm just saying, you talk about all these associations and these properties around here, 70–75% of landlords help them as well. That's one. The other part, Danielle, can you, Habitat for Home, can you get her to come to one of your meetings soon? And let's get an update on Habitat for Home. I see a lot of good things, a lot of good blocks, a lot of things happening in here. But I like a little update on what's going on with that. And even that portion, it kind of rolls out. But you put, I've seen blocks where they've come in and took those whole blocks with some really nice homes. And these people have maintained them, kept them. And here you go to the next street over and just it's that and the Millerized zone is coming on, or this other thing here, next block over here. So we have to be able to help her as well, Habitat for Home. So when I talk about that, that's being able to go out and create these co-ops. We bring in businesses and things, all the other features that homeowners want to have, grocery store stuff next to them in here. How do we help empower them? And I think combined voices with all of that, landlords, her giving an update on what they're doing, the direction they're going, places they've been, and where they're trying to strengthen up where they need the most help. I think that'd be beneficial for all of us. And then TCAM, the old church, they're moving. So what are they gonna do with that building?
I have no idea.
I just wonder. I know the city was looking at it, the city's been wanting that property for a long time, but the city doesn't. They want county. They want it for a long time. They want more expansion, whether it's jails or whatever here. But
they were looking at putting in a mental health. Yeah, small mental health. For your first point, how would an association of landlords help with a slumlord that owns 100 properties?
Well, I tell you this here. Most of those that are scattered out, you've got some concentrations where there are 100 units in one building in here, and you might have a slumlord that's doing some things in nature in here. Yeah, that's a project the city can really focus in on, because that's one location. When you have these multiple houses, multiple blocks in here, where they're scattered out, individual house owners, or even some of them own 2 or 3 houses here, 2 or 3 over there, and multiple over here. They are next to somebody, another landlord, a homeowner, stuff of this nature in here. When we talk about city going out writing up overgrown weeds or issues with the house and stuff of this nature, even your Section 8. First thing we come back is we're understaffed. We have limited budget. We don't have enough to go out and police this whole area. But when you empower an landlord association, because within these in here, you can focus them in on homeowners associations. That gives you some boundaries and parameters in here, and those particular landlords who live within those in here.
How would they be empowered?
Well, part of that is that if you pay into dues in here to be a part of that association, it's kind of like what you're doing with this housing for It's one we just passed. Airbnbs, yeah, short term, I went blank. They want to be, they have to be licensed, insured, and do all of such and such in here. They can't have so many within such and such feet and boundaries and stuff of this nature in here. But you hold them to a higher level of accountability and stuff in here and makes them do different things. It's kind of too late for some of these neighborhoods to come in and say, hey, within these boundaries here, you can only have X number of rental properties. If I got a neighborhood over here and I say, hey, I got a mill area in here and there's 3,000 people live in here, and that 3,000 proximity in here, you can only have 10% rental property.
Yeah, well, everything you just said would mean the government. Landlord association.
Well, what that does is it give you a way to identify who the landlords is and help to enforce that. By making them register, make them pay dues, and some of those dues are to help go out and hire more people or whatever they need to do to go out and enforce some of these codes and do these things. I don't have a problem as a landlord because if I want a good tenant and I'm doing all I can to keep my property up, to keep this up in here, I'd rather pay whatever $100, $200 a year than to sit up and let my place go vacant or get vandalized here for 6 months or a year because the other landlords are just letting it go and it's just getting caught up in it. So I think there's a way to help them as well.
Yeah, I think that's more property rights. The retaliation ordinance actually is doing everything you're saying, because we would be focusing on the people not paying attention.
Well, I think what you're gonna get is kind of what I said in here. When I look at these properties over here, and I'm just talking about Mill Air, you know, you drive through there, most of those used to be homeowners. They moved out. A lot of landlords, a lot of them black, brought these properties, got them at auctions or low levels, low purchase prices in here and started renting them out. But they were getting the same rent that the one on the east side or west side because it's fair housing in here. So whatever you were getting for 800 square foot, 1,000 square foot house over on the east and west side in here, you could get it over here. And Section 8 subsidized 89% of it in here. When Section 8 became more stringent, the city becomes more stringent in here. These landlords might have brought these properties $10,000, $15,000. Well, they recouped that in the first year or two. And so everything after that's been profit. And when you tell them this, you can be more restricted to come here and keep this thing up and do this and this thing in here. His thing is either I let it go or I sell it. And you just turn it over to another landlord or just letting it sit vacant.
My hope is that every slumlord will sell their property to somebody.
Unless you put some things that are helping. If we don't have a homeowners association that makes them do certain things and finds them in this here. So that's where we say that the city and homeowners, landlords, homeowners, neighborhoods can help put some of these things in place. You know, you become the bigger police in helping them police.
So, you know, everything I've said wouldn't impact you at all unless you were doing something like that.
It wouldn't impact me in here, but what I'm saying in this portion here is where are the people gonna go? In the meantime, when you're telling this guy, we're gonna make you do something, you're gonna have to do something, or we're gonna shut you down. Where's the guy gonna go?
So
He's struggling with mold and
this is
here.
not a,
It's the reason he's
it's not
there.
an A, B, C approach we're taking. We're doing everything. We're
Yeah.
working on getting more affordable housing at the same time. We're working on encouraging folks who want to develop to build instead of having older rundown apartments, build some new ones.
We're not being realistic in the value. When you talk about these neighborhoods in here, you got the data here. It tells you most of them been living here with a high school education. Most of those are $25,000 or less. Multiple families here, they can't afford this affordable housing. As you say, it's coming. This affordable housing is coming down the pipe for them.
Don't charge them that much rent. If you care more about money than taking care of people, that's part of the problem. So the focus.
I think
that
we're not
we've
being
had is
realistic
folks
in
who
there.
actually care. And it is realistic. There are people that I've met with that will build houses brand new and rent them out for $850, $900 a month. And even that's kind of expensive, but if they get a housing choice voucher to cover, I think $795 of that. So again, if folks are only focused on building something and charging $1,800 a month, yes, price us out. But you have to have people that come in and do the right thing. And there are people out there like that. And more people will do it as we begin to crack down on this.
If that was so true, Brandon, all them boarded up houses over there that the city owns and stuff in here, and you send such great landlords and developers out there, they would have purchased those houses and put people in them.
So you missed the part where I told you that HUD has to approve the sale of that. And HUD has not approved the sale of that yet. So to even say that there's no interest in that.
It'd be interesting to see all these houses now that the city said we're ready to sell.
Every time the city puts
who
out
the
some
buyers
houses,
are.
there's high interest, very high interest. People are interested in that, going to those open houses. Once council approves E57, I'm sure we'll see higher turnout at those as well.
Okay,
People
I
want those.
I've been talking this about landlords association for about 4 years. I'm not gonna get into a long conversation and hold everybody here, but I'm just saying that if that's your biggest army, then you need to look at a way to empower.
I've been to landlord associations to talk about this, and the only opposition I've had was really from one person who didn't think the government should get involved. Other than that, they all were supportive of making sure this happens because it helps them out. So I know that there's opposing views on that. I tend to believe that if we put profit over people, there will be a problem. I'll continue to push for regulating the situations that we find ourselves in, because right now, nothing's happening. Free market is counting. So we got to step in and do something.
I think the thing that I've noticed here, even some of your apartment complexes in here, which have Rock Road and some of these in here, when they become under new management, a lot of those, they put out their section 8. Most of them had to leave. Quite a few of them in here. A lot of them won't even accept section 8. And so it ain't because of the money that they're gonna get subsidized in here. There's other issues, and you're not addressing those other issues.
Anyway, we can change that as well. So I have proposed that we add source of income to our non-discrimination ordinance, which would stop that and force people to take that. There is a city in Kansas that's already done it. I am looking at that ordinance, hope to have more conversation about that next year. Therefore, if you do have a housing choice voucher, that's what you need to get a house, you'd be able to without worrying about being discriminated against. There's so many property management companies here that do that, that it's a problem. So I'm glad you brought that up. It is something that I'm looking at as well. Again, free market is what we have now. If it was to solve the problem, people could just go find somewhere else, they would. As we found with Calvary Towers, it was pretty quick. There were folks that had felony backgrounds, they didn't want to rent one. Some of those folks were accused of sexual things that two teenagers did, and they got labeled for life, and they can't get housing because people don't want sex offenders there. There's always some stipulation that these places have, and our goal is to remove barriers. And I saw how hard it is to find that now without any help from the government, from those folks. Most of those people didn't find somewhere else to go, or found some relative that luckily helped them out, or some slumlord that said, if you paint the wall one more time, you can stay in.
Or city
The goal
shelters,
is to address all of those things. Sometimes.
or more city shelters, and we're struggling with that. Just saying.
Foreign house people, I mean, we can go down the rabbit hole on that. There's been more evictions. The eviction moratorium was raised by the governor and the president. People got evicted. People didn't have work to pay their bills, so that was the only way they could stay. There's a lot more people on the street, a lot more people facing hard times, and we have to systemically help, from employment to housing to everything we can do. So yes, there is a higher need for shelter space. There is a higher need to help our unhoused population. But also as government, we don't have to sit back and watch as slumlords continue to do what they do in the city. I don't have to keep getting messages from people who are with some of these slumlords, one in which you know, who just kicks them out because they complain about not having heat in the winter, not having cool in the summer. That's not fair. And housing to me is a right that you should have. Everybody should have decent housing. You don't have to have marble floors, but you should be able to have a place to lay in, not worry about bugs and mold and all of that. None of us would want that for us or our families. So that is what we strive towards. And I think sitting back and, even if you wanted to take that approach, you could create a landlord association. I'd be interested to see how with the right in America, the property rights argument.
No, it's kind of like this, Brandon, when corporations are trying to merge and do things of nature in here, the corporate CEO, he doesn't call down to the first level manager in here and say, what can we do to make this merger happen? They talk at those levels. So when I'm saying that this portion we're talking about now, whether it's county and city in here at their levels, even at your level in here, you have more success calling, and I would definitely attend as one of those callees in here. I want to call a landlord's meeting and these property owners that we readily know. If I can get that list from my neighborhood associations, of those landlords in your neighborhood association, I would like to send them an invite to a meeting. Now, I think coming from my city council and my district person in here, I think they're much more attentive to come to you than to say, well, Lonnie Barnes say, can we have a meeting?
The basis of my claim is that we are in here and this is our neighborhood. And I own the property and I'm not taking care of it the way I should. How do you believe an association of landlords is gonna force me to do anything with my property if I don't care?
Well, I think there's ways, Brandon, I really do. Because for one, you got more eyes on it to investigate and follow up on
You
it.
have more eyes. So
And
right now,
once, and so,
rest in peace to Ms. Overton.
so
Ms.
once,
Overton would tell me about properties all the time.
Brandon, I
She would get
sent,
landlords to tell me about properties.
I remember
all the
4
time.
years ago, I sent you, I sent
How are
the
they gonna make me do it?
city chief of police, I sent the mayor a letter. I'm watching drug transaction happen in the daytime, right in front of the units over there. I took pictures and showed you where the guy lived. Everybody said, well, and even the neighborhood association sent it to them. And you know, that activity in here, it didn't stop. It didn't stop. They said, well, you need to take that to the police station. That's their responsibility. That's what you would tell them in here. You tell them the neighborhood, they're saying, well, he's a landlord. He doesn't live in here. We have our own problem, but the drug problem's still going on. So I'm saying everybody has to own their part and get involved in it. They can't keep saying it. That's somebody else's responsibility as long as you do. I'm saying collectively, why
What
don't
you were
we?
saying though is you wanna get a bunch of other people to try to target the person I want to target. I want to go at that person with ordinance. You're saying, well, don't do that. Let's get this landlord association, let them talk. let
I'm
them
just
discuss.
telling you here, Brandon, that the speed limits, red signs, they're making people run them for those who obey in here. And if you're gonna tell me, well, we can't enforce it enough, but we ain't got enough police, then what do we need to do?
You
That
are
means you gotta get
suggesting-
more funds, you gotta get more
what you're
resources, you
suggesting,
gotta get more invited.
having a landlord association with no governmental authority.
Well, if you
Solve the
look at your homeowners associations and the empowerment they have here.
They have legal power.
Well, and that's what I'm saying here, somewhere we need to give some legal power, maybe even to that landlords association, what they can.
Yeah, so.
That's a conversation.
HOAs,
It's a conversation.
One developer that.
I think it's a
entire
conversation
property.
worth having and saying that we can't do nothing about it.
That's not the same as a neighborhood association.
I don't think we can, without having the conversation, just saying, well, I don't see what we can do about it. That's all I'm saying, just have the conversation and let that wash.
And
All
I
right.
think the last time you said that, nothing is stopping you from starting that conversation.
I thought I just explained to you in here, Randy, trying to identify who all the landlords are, you have a better scope and a vision on that. Even contacting the neighborhood association presidents, asking them to request that. They're much more responsive and should be more responsive to you. If they've got issues and problems, than they would just me. I can complain all day, and I do, about my neighbor over here, what he's doing, or that one ain't cutting grass across the street. I can call in down there and they'll say, well, we'll send somebody over there. 3 months later, it's still the same. I take the ownership, I take the responsibility of doing something in here, but just me by myself, that's just one brush, one bristle of a brush trying to paint this canvas.
It's the due process. So when you make a complaint, they still have 35 days to address.
Well, that means you got a broke process and then you got it understaffed and everything else. So how do we fix those? What is fixing the problem?
How are you gonna take away a constitutional right of due process, whether we like it or not? And that's the
Our
US
constitutional processes are not in stone. We change them. We vote every time we have an election.
The
What we want
US
to do.
Constitution. Do you know what it takes to change the US Constitution?
Well,
It has to be ratified, one, by 3/4 of the states in the United States. We haven't had a constitutional amendment since the
I
60s.
think we need a constitutional change to fix the little things in our
Due
neighborhood.
process, yes, you do.
In our neighborhood,
Yes, for due process. You're guaranteed due process.
then my issue, his issue will remain the same. All right,
But unless you change the constitution.
so the constitution gets changed. The man's gonna be just.
For due process, everything else is not that good. Any other questions?
Try to get Danielle here.
Our emails on the Habitat website. Well, seeing no other questions, we'll be here in January, I think January 6th for our January 1st meeting in 2024. Our guests, we invite the city manager.
Yes.
Yes, so we'll have the city manager and Dalton here, in January. We may have an agreement on, breakfast. Saw some commentary online. I don't know if Michaela's still looking, but.
Fresh food, fresh fruit. Fresh fruit?
Yeah, fresh fruit. She'll probably send me a message. But yeah, we'll try to have some breakfast there. We're glad you all can make it. Hopefully we can bring more people in January. See you next month.
So the 19th December that was the land specifically? Or did I hear that
19th,
wrong?
yes, the retaliatory landlord.
Okay. And that's at 6 p.m.
That is at City Hall, 9 a.m. That one will hear about that, if you want to hear that Monday. It's 6 p.m. here. So it's going to DAB, then it comes back to council for final vote,
What day was that final vote?
December 19th, it's the third Tuesday.
The commentary for the bonus?
That's this. Yeah, I think that's. Like 5.
Right. Merry Christmas.